Good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, July 23rd, 2024, regular meeting of the Select Board of the Town of Milton. If I could ask everyone to please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For the purpose of tonight's meeting, we're going to flip items 3 and 4 on the agenda. So I'm going to, 3 and 5, and I'm going to ask the chair of the school building committee, Mr. Sean O'Rourke, to join us for our presentation. Welcome. You're going to, what are you zooming in?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sean O'Rourke, 27 Quarry Lane, town meeting member, precinct 8, and chair of the school building committee.
Mr. O'Rourke, push the microphone.
Yeah, you might bring them closer to you.
I'll repeat that.
You're tall.
Yeah,
Okay,
sorry. You know how it is.
Okay.
So, Sean O'Rourke, 27 Quarry Lane, town meeting member, precinct 8, chair of the school building committee. With me tonight, too, is my vice chair, Mark Loring, and our OPM, Sean Berg. Ms. Milano. Online is Shanali Regali and Larry Spang, who are architects, just in case any questions come up. Mr. Chair, I do have a presentation that I'd like to give. Thank you.
That's why you're here.
Appreciate it. And Ms. Milano, if you could just promote me. Yep. This works. All right.
It's all yours.
All right, so let's get started. So basically, the format of the presentation is a brief introduction for a school building committee for those who are not familiar with us. Walk through basically what we work with the architects and our consultants with, called visioning sessions, how those visioning sessions have led into the design and formed the design. And essentially that design has led into a cost estimation, which you all know you've been looking for, and essentially close it out with our schedule. So school building committee is made up of 9 members. 5 at the top are appointed by the town moderator, including myself. The bottom left is Mr. Loring and Dr. Miranda from school committee. Mrs. Cohane joined us in June, and Glenn Hoffman are appointees of this board here. So this is the graph they update each year, which basically shows the yellow horizontal line shows the elementary school capacity at 1,900. For probably approximately the past 8 years, we've been operating 1 grade level above that capacity, and it's shown throughout the district through a number of presentations I've given previously on space needs. The key thing to note here is on the bottom is the size of the kindergartens, and our incoming kindergarten class right now, the incoming class is approximately 369 students. So when you look on that graph, the largest number at kindergarten is 372 in 2019. The concern is with this incoming class, they lead to a large base class that always increases from kindergarten up to 1st grade. So even though it's going to come in as a big class, it's just going to grow as it propagates through the schools. And the key for that is we don't have space. So the current configuration of the district right now consists of 4 elementary schools, middle school, and a high school with the grade configurations that we show here. What our project has promoted is the creation of an upper middle school and redistribution of the grades, specifically at the elementary school level, keeping it kindergarten to 4th. So what that does is by removing preschool and the 5th grade out of there, we free up space in the elementary schools without the need to redistrict by introducing a new school. The peer school, which is now absorbing all these large classes, is also squished for space. So by removing a grade level there, we address that one. The introduction that we do is here over on Gile Road is creating an upper middle school for 7th and 8th graders and a preschool. So brief timeline since we kind of met last fall town meeting. We were afforded additional funding, and essentially with that we built a team of PMA Architecture, who's with us tonight, along with Arrow Street. We executed the contracts, negotiated everything, and got it done by February. Immediately starting that in March, we went through visioning sessions, which I'll touch on in coming slides. Overlapping that visioning, it fed into design. So they didn't sequentially hit each other, they overlapped. So we had design going essentially since early April. And then we're here tonight. So as everyone's aware, as I mentioned, Gile Road is the preferred site that we have. The land swap had passed town meeting last year. We identified a parcel shown here as parcel 2. And we've used that parcel with the architects right now to basically develop the site. The development that we have there, as I mentioned it at the last select board meeting, is a campus strategy where we introduced 2 separate buildings. A standalone larger building for the upper middle school and a separate building for preschool. So additional work that we've done above and beyond that are borings along Gile Road. Part of the feed into the cost estimate, we want to make sure we're working with correct things. So the data that we pulled from the borings allowed us to feed into this cost estimate that you're about to hear. The other thing that we did too is take soil analysis for hazmat contamination. There's no hazmat there, which is a good thing. Another thing that fed into this cost estimate. One of the other ones that came up early on when we met with the Conservation Commission, there was anticipated wetlands that the conservation agent thought that was along Gile Road. We've worked with BSC Engineering to go out, actually do soil samples and look at it and determine there are no wetlands at this spot. So it was a unique thing to try to figure out how you determine what a wetland is, who makes that decision. So it was a collaborative effort through us and the Conservation Commission. So the visioning sessions, essentially what this is, assume somebody asks you to build your dream house. You go in, they give you pictures of everything that's there. You work with them and feed into this vision of what you want to see. So what that did is led to a number of meetings, as you see here. They toured the existing schools. We did listening sessions with a number of the district leadership team that you can see there that was made up of the superintendent, principals, director of early childhood education, over 20 teachers, special education, service providers, libraries, IT department, we had everybody there. So there was input from all sides that fed into this, along with our design team. So as you can see, there was a lot of work done basically through April all the way through May. The other one that paired up with this is taking that visioning and also going out to sites to look at what new schools look like. So what we did is we visited 4 sites, 2 middle schools, 2 preschools. So the first one that we went to was the Chapman Middle School in Weymouth. This one was built in 2022. Very large, bigger than what we were doing here, but again, using it to pull out little details that we want to feed into our project. Similarly, we went to Lester Gates Middle School. Very similar, high-tech, lots of space, well-lit, great site. Now, for preschools, we started at the Newton Early Childhood Education Center. This was actually a former elementary school, so this is a renovation. So when you see the cost of that there, the cost is skewed a little bit because they had the existing building, they had the existing site, they just gutted it and rehabbed it. The amazing thing with this one was the amount of space that we had compared to what we have now. And then lastly, probably one of the more beautiful ones we got to visit was the Douglas Gates Preschool. This is kind of similar to what we were doing, as an elementary school with a preschool all under one building. So ours are 2 separate buildings, but at least it fed into that there. The one thing I would ask you to do is, before that Douglas Gates School, they had to do, it was an MSBA project, they had to do a tour of the schools. This YouTube video, what you see on the bottom there is what they had in those schools before. On the top is kind of what you see after. And it's eerily familiar to the before of kind of what we're experiencing now. So when we look at that, our classrooms right now, we have classrooms in libraries with office partitions, inadequate acoustical separation, compared to theirs, properly sized, acoustically separated, lots of tech. Music classrooms. As you know, we have music classrooms on stages. They have music classrooms with dedicated desks, equipment, and again, technology. Library, which is a big one. The bottom that you see here is the Collycott Cunningham Library. These are basically cannibalized spaces, and they're used for storage, everything else. Everything gets thrown in there. It's like a potpourri. The Douglas Gates School that you see at the top is dedicated as a library. It's dedicated for reading. It's quiet. So finally, this is one that kind of goes ignored sometimes, is teachers' professional spaces. Last year, at Collycott Cunningham, they had their teachers on the stage behind a curtain. And as you see from Newton, they have dedicated space, cabinet work, proper storage, everything for them. As a professional, that's kind of what I would be expecting for us. So all these visioning site visits, they fit into what we're going to look into now for design. One thing we did through the design, as I mentioned, we had a visioning session. As I'm sure if someone asked you to design your house would be very large, very expensive, right? So when we did the visioning session, the overall square footage that we came up with was 202,000 square feet. As we looked at that, for the number of students we had enrolled, we understood it was way too big, just by density of the students. So we worked with the district leadership team, right-sized the spaces by reducing some of the classroom overall square footage, and then went through our first revision there. The one thing to note on that too is that visioning session, they visioned preschool to be full-day preschool. Right now, we only have one full-day preschool at Tucker. Everything else is half-days. So that was one of the things that we cut back on. Further, we refined it more and basically brought it down to what you're going to see tonight at 152,000 square feet. Some of the key things there, we reduced it from 8 teams to 7 teams, which is currently how the middle school operates, but it gives them more space. The key thing we wanted to do is, as we were drawing this back, we wanted to make sure we didn't pull it back too much. So what we did is look at other schools, the average square foot per student, to look at that. So when we took these examples of schools that were built at 186 square feet per student, we're at 191. So, we didn't cut back too far, and we're actually above where other schools are operating. So diving into the middle school, looking at that, what you see on the left is an exploded view of the school. It's 4 stories. Obviously, the largest is at the first floor, and then the upper 3 floors are smaller, and we'll walk through each one. So on the first floor, it's roughly 59,000 square feet. It consists of a gymnasium, auditorium, the administration, exploratory classroom, STEM tech, and then the cafeteria. The second floor, and these start to get a little repetitive, are 22,000, 23,000 square feet. The media room or the library is on that second floor, and then we started introducing the teams, 2 teams of 7th grade, along with special education. The other one that we do here is we, again, mix in more teams, and we introduce our world languages. The world languages are special because we had dedicated space for them that we wasn't planning on if it was an MSBA project. And then finally, the top floor is the 8th grade. So one of the things when we talk about teams, a team is made up of 3 regular-sized classrooms and a science lab. So as we talk about these teams, they're clusters of classrooms that they occupy. So overall, for the middle school, it's 127,000 square feet, approximately 7 teams, an auditorium. So originally, when we had our space that we did previously with DRA architecture, they didn't have an auditorium. They didn't go to this level of detail. So part of the feedback that we've got from here is the existing Pierce has an auditorium, and it would be dysfunctional if we had kids at a younger grade going up to the school not having that. So the preschool is a lot easier, a couple slides, because it's only 2 floors. So 2 floors, the first floor has a couple classrooms and all the special ed, and a larger portion of the special ed, along with a big room for playing, the administrative space, and the classrooms. So we overall have 9 classrooms in there. Similarly, summary, 25,000 square feet, 9 classrooms, and what I discussed about administration and special ed. So as we mentioned, all this fed into our feasibility study. We took this feasibility study, it's 161 pages of narratives and drawings. We provided this over to our cost estimator last week, and he developed kind of a total a construction cost. Along with that construction cost, we'll add a percentage, 30% per OPM, for soft costs, for their designer fees, and FF&E. This is a graph that MSBA publishes. It's a live graph as they update their data. So what you see here in the trend line is actual bid costs that they've got back from MSBA for average cost in new construction. As you can see, it consistently goes up. Now, the data to the right, they don't have the trend line there because they have not received bids back. But if you extrapolate along there, you can see the line actually increases dramatically over the past 2 years. So as we look at those, the assumed trend line, when you look at that data, is steep. Our cost estimator has come in basically exactly as we expected for the start of our construction. What he does is he goes to the midpoint of construction for escalation. Our square footage cost that he's estimating at this point right now is $877 per square foot. So what does that mean in the program? So the construction cost that we're looking at right now is roughly $133 million. The breakdown of that, or round number summary, the initial site work is $2.3 million. The building and site work for the remainder would be about $95 million. $14 million in contingency. So the idea of contingency, I know there's a concern that people don't think we're far enough along. Part of when you design at this point, you carry a higher contingency. As you increase the design and find things, you reduce your contingency, so they play off of each other. The escalation that's built in there right now, I highlighted for everyone just to talk, is $5 million to that midpoint. And then the other ones for general condition bonds, and we'll provide all this to you to kind of look through, but that's the breakdown. Now, when we take that cost estimation and we put in that 30%, the overall project cost comes out to $173 million. I was waiting for a drum roll from the chair.
I'm waiting for someone to have chest pain and collapse on the floor myself. But I heard it earlier today, so I'm already, I've already swallowed that golf ball.
That's fine. So, for us, the timeline that I presented before, we've been working internally as a committee over 5 years on this project, developing the scope, trying to grease the skids so that when we brought architects and OPMs on, they would have a head start for where we needed to go. They came on, we had a site, we had a program, right? So we've asked them, they got a good head start starting on this. So since essentially the beginning of March, we've been doing a lot of work, and it's come to this conclusion right now that we're at this point where we have a number. It's a ceiling as far as I'm concerned. I agree with you. It's higher than we thought. But what we're looking for this is to let people vote on it. If the concern is that it's too high, it will get voted down. But if it doesn't, then we have funding for a school. Part of the good thing with this number that we can do now is we can work with the town administrator, finance department, figure out what the tax impacts would be on these. And, we know you've been eager to hear these, and that's why we've been working so hard over the past couple of weeks. Ideally with this, as we've enunciated since April 6, 2022, we were looking for a 2024, 2025 debt exclusion. And, for me, we have been on target with this. We're on schedule for this. And, that's why, for us, this is very important to us. So I think with that, the three questions that always come out since I started this 5 years ago is, what are we building? We're building a middle school. We got the program. Where is it going? Guile Road. The House and the Senate have both engrossed the bills for the land swap. It's scheduled for roll call votes. My anticipation is it will be done by the end of the month. And then finally, how much will it cost? And, we're here tonight to kind of lay that out there for discussion.
I picked the high number. The chair and I, when we met 8 weeks ago, I picked a pretty high number. I thought Ben would, and this has surpassed that by a significant amount already. So it's.
If I could touch one thing too, Mr. Chair. So the number that we have there is not reflective of rebates that we get from Mass Save and geothermal rebates. So there's probably $7 to $8 million that we'll get back in rebates. So the 173 there is most likely 165. But we have to carry that number first for financial, and then as we get those rebates, it basically pays the debt down.
You make a note of that, because that's something I want to talk about later on.
Yep.
Thank you. Questions or comments before I? The silence is deafening here. No, thank you. I think we're good. I think for me, most of 99% of what you've presented tonight we've been pretty familiar with. Oh, go ahead. Mr. Zoll.
If I may, Mr. O'Rourke, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Loring. Thank you, everybody that served on this committee for so many years. In the earlier slide that you put up, this was a noted problem in 2008. And it's only gotten worse since then. And I know that this committee's been working for over 5 years. You've worked without, and oftentimes thanks, without pay, and really, your service to this town is so deeply appreciated. So I want to lead with that. Is there anything in the numbers that you've seen, and maybe Mr. Loring might have a little more insight on this too, that would make you think that there's going to be a cliff for enrollment in the Milton Public Schools, where suddenly we're going to, drop, down below that threshold that we've been over since almost for 20 years now?
So I'll do my best to answer it. You can jump in after. But since I started on the committee, I've been studying the data for enrollment. If you're going to see that reduction happen, it's going to happen at the kindergarten level, because again, once the kids get into the elementary school level, they don't get out. If anything, they grow as they progress through. So with the incoming class that we have at 369, maybe bigger as you get last minute parents kind of jumping in, I don't foresee a reduction in that. If anything, it'd be more of back to an increase like we saw. Our peak was in 2019.
Thank you. So just
Yes,
a
sir.
quick question, and it's probably more for Dr. Burrows. The preschool they pay, is preschool free here? Completely free?
This preschool is mixed, so some families pay and some families don't pay.
I'll leave that for another. I'll leave that for another meeting. Anyone else?
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
If we don't build this new school, what happens? How are we going to start mitigating this problem? Because we can't continue to have kids learning in these conditions. They're terrible.
Correct. So right now, and Mark can touch on this one, the Facilities Advisory Subcommittee of the school committee, right, not school building committee, a separate committee, is looking at renovating the 4th floor of the Cunningham Library, Cunningham School. And my understanding, it'll be 2 classrooms into the library for anticipation. Basically something to create additional space right now. That's not going to be enough. What that's going to lead to later on is these kind of small fixes that we're going to do for millions of dollars each time. At some point, we're going to have to go to modular classrooms, trailers, right? And the spaces for those are, most of the time when they do these for schools, end up on the playgrounds. So, my anticipation, we haven't discussed it yet with the district or anything like that. We've talked about it on multiple meetings and things like that. But my concern is if this project is delayed further, one of the things is the cost will increase, and then we're going to spend additional money on these kind of temporary fixes. They'll be part of it, and most likely it will be trailers.
Thank you. I'm just going to conclude by saying thank you again. I also want to give a genuine apology. When you hear things like this, and as you may guess, I was not surprised by Mr. O'Rourke's answer. You get passionate about what's happening to the children in this town. And at our last meeting, my emotions were a little high because of what's happening to our kids. And for that, I apologize. I apologize particularly to Mr. Cohane and to Ms. Musto for language that I might have used that was over the top. And I'm going to endeavor to keep that in check going forward. But it's suffice to say, I think there are many people in this town that are very, very frustrated by this, and I owe it to them to not be frustrated in these discussions. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for the indulgence.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Bradley.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Mr. O'Rourke, first, thank you for all that you've given the community for the last 5 years. I can only imagine the toll it's taken on your personal life and the hours that you've given So thank you for that. The number that you presented tonight, the 133.5 million, is there any possibility that that number would go down?
Potentially.
Okay.
So, essentially, if we were to, and this is my understanding, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, if we're aiming for a November ballot, as we mentioned on our schedule, the ballot question would need to get entered. The ballot question doesn't have a dollar value associated with it, right?
Correct.
The dollar value gets enunciated at town meeting through a warrant article.
Correct.
Right? So between the time now to the time we have to issue that warrant article and have the text for that to go to print is essentially time that we could refine that number and bring it down. As I said, this for me seems like a ceiling. The other part of this that happens too is, we've been operating up to this point with, a figurative budget. We haven't had funding to have an independent cost estimator provide this. And what it does is provide kind of a financial boundary to us, guardrails for the design. So, part of it is, having that as we progress design is a good thing. This is kind of how large capital projects work. It comes up through a schematic design. You build that out to create a budget. You create a contingency in there. And then as designers or professionals, you work towards that budget that's there. I know tonight with that high of a budget, it's probably easy to say that. But, the reality is construction costs have skyrocketed. They are extremely high. The more we wait on this, the higher they're going. And as I mentioned to Mr. Zoll, the need's still there and getting worse.
Right.
So,
Right, thank you so
Okay.
much. Mr. Chair, I have one more question, and it's for you. At our last meeting of the Select Board, you said that we would be taking a vote on this evening. I notice on our agenda, it does not say discussion approval, so it's only a discussion. So I'd like to know what your plan is for the approval, because you had promised us at the last meeting that we would be doing that today.
So I made that with the thought that I was going to have a number before tonight. And when we set the agenda on Friday, we still didn't have a number. And I received the number just this morning at 10 o'clock, so there was no sense putting, and to be honest, this is unprecedented.
Right,
Okay,
but
let
you
me
had
just finish.
said-
Let me finish. You asked me a question. Let me just finish the question. The second thing is that item 6. No, not item 6. Item 4 also came into play, which I did not expect, which is, when we get to that, is going to impact the operational override that hasn't even been mentioned in here. That is very much on our radar screen, and if not to get into it, if anything, it probably is going to exacerbate the reality that we're going to need an operational in the spring versus being able to, as we've talked about before, and as Mr. Milan was worked on, hopefully trying to push that off a year so that we only had to deal with this. So that's why, and to be honest with you, I did not expect it to be larger than what I had been saying publicly.
So, Mr. Chair.
I don't know. I don't know when it was
Again,
scheduled.
I understand what you're saying, except I'm a little I'm disappointed, because at the last meeting, and Mr. Chair, I just want to say this, and I'm not saying this in any other way, except you publicly told us that we would take a vote this evening. I understand that they were late getting us the information. So my question to you is, when are we going
I
to
don't
take
know.
a vote on this?
I don't know.
So the last meeting where you specifically said twice that we would take this vote,
I've answered it.
you do not feel like that we should be doing that, and you don't know when we're going to do it next, is what you're saying.
I don't think in the history of this town, any board, any select board has been presented with as monumental a number as we've just received today.
Absolutely, we have. The fire department, when we did all 3 fire stations,
Apples and
they
oranges.
they
Apples and
came to us and asked us for 3 fire stations. It was a larger amount of money than what we're currently asking for. And so what I'm trying to
Not
figure
even
out,
close.
Mr. Chair, is whether or
I
not,
don't know.
well,
I don't know.
I'd hope that the
I don't
public
know.
now knows that the chair has said that we would vote this evening and now has no plan for us to vote in the future.
Mr. Chair, if I
I didn't say that either, but, go ahead, Mr. Zoll.
I think when we met last, also there was, because, and Mr. Maloney, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have an August 7th deadline to get.
I know that. I'm aware of
So
that.
our next regularly scheduled select board meeting is August 12th.
So it's going to have to be a special meeting. And
So
this-
will we have a special meeting?
I think we're going to have to decide one way or another.
I think we should decide now, because if we don't, I'd
It's
like
not
to
on the
make a
agenda.
motion.
It's not on the agenda for tonight, so we're not going to, So the other thing that the members need to know, to place this on the agenda requires a majority of 4.
I'm aware of that.
Of 4.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion then to put a ballot question on the November election ballot to authorize a debt exclusion for the purposes of designing and constructing
it's not
and
up for vote
equipping.
tonight.
Excuse me, I'm still making the motion. I'd like to make a motion to put a ballot question on the November election ballot to authorize a debt exclusion for the purposes of designing and constructing and equipping a new middle school and pre-K, and authorize town council to draft language accordingly.
I'll second.
All those in favor? I would, you're out of vote. It's not up for this vote tonight.
I can make this motion for as part of this agenda item.
It's not up for approval.
Right, but he can make a
I can make the
motion
motion
about it.
to put
and that's,
this on the
you know,
ballot, which I've
I
done.
believe your motion's out of order, but for the purpose of making it tonight, I'm going to vote no, because, as I said, you bring up a good word, emotion, you bring up the word passion. This is even bigger than I could have imagined. Our top accountant is sitting here. We have no clue what the debt is going to be, we have no idea at all.
We
And
do actually have
no,
some idea.
We don't.
We all received a presentation from Mr. Fundling with an estimation, and admittedly his number was a little bit on the low side, but we've received some information in terms of what our current debt exclusion is, what our future debt exclusion is. So it's not quite true that we would say we don't have any idea what the impact of this would be.
correct.
And I'm sorry for interrupting you.
So, the motion is made and seconded. I think it's out of order, but if you want to vote on it for tonight, I'm fine. I'm going to vote no because I cannot, getting a number like this tonight, decide just like that. This is the biggest, and it's not even close to the fire station. I wish that this were as simple as having the Hurley Amendment to address this. It is not. And one question, Mr. Orkin, I just want to ask you, of the 4 schools that you made reference to,
Yes, sir.
how many of them got MSBA money assistance? I think I probably already know the answer, but
No, I believe it's 3 out of the 4. I would defer to the architects. They may know specifically. The only one I think that didn't was the Newton one that was a renovation.
a renovation. But
Correct.
you would agree with me that we are in uncharted waters here, building a school of this magnitude, of this cost on our own.
Brighton
Oh.
High School was built for $200 million and was completely funded by the town. I'm sorry, Brookline, I believe.
Yeah.
So, I
Brighton
mean, it's
High
not,
School
it's not
is-
uncharted
Brighton High
water
School's in the
to,
city of Boston.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I meant Brookline.
Brookline. But there are, so one of the things, so is the board's aware, we've gone down parallel paths for financing. We've gone with MSBA, and we've also gone looking at, doing it on our own. Obviously, my preference is to do it on our own because we have such a head start that we could make the construction schedule much smaller. As I've said multiple times, if we continue down the path that we're going, like I said at one meeting, if we get all green lights, we're open in 2027, right? If we get blinking yellow lights, red lights, or anything like that, we're delayed. And that delay is, with that high of a number, and you start applying escalation, inflation costs to it, it starts getting staggering when you start talking about that number in regards to just delaying it. That's one of my concerns. There are districts out there now, I believe Concord and some others, I can forward them to you, that have gone it on their own, mainly for that exact reason, to do it quicker and to kind of save the money on the construction costs that way. The amount that we would realize through reimbursement through MSBA would get gobbled up by that escalation very quickly over a 7-year timeline. Like the MSBA's, we're going to hit reset, go back, start their program at Module 1, and progress to kind of where we are now at Module 2 or 3. And all that delay that we'd encounter there would basically just create a lot of escalation associated with it.
So, Mr. Chair, I will,
second.
I was just going to withdraw mine. All right.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Well,
I will, if we can have a meeting.
I'll
I
definitely
understand.
schedule a meeting. I think we have to vote on this, but to me, this, as I say, this is well beyond, and the chair and Dr. Burrows, they've sat and listened to me, and if you remember many weeks ago, I walked out, I said, I'm picking 150, and then they were at like 120. I said, well, I'm gonna pick 150,
So
and now we're at
it's less.
170.
no, we're at 133.
We're at
No.
173 million total. This is 175 million, this is a $170 million debt exclusion override.
Yeah,
Where did I get 133.5 from?
That was just
If
the
I-
construction
yeah.
cost minus
Thank
the
you so
30.
much.
Yeah.
Listen, and I'm not, look at, the one thing, people talk about transparency, this is, you know this, you've heard me say this, Chair Carroll knows, Assistant Superintendent Pavlicek knows, like, I've been in this, I know the cost, I understand, but you gotta give us a little bit of time to at least look at this and look at numbers and start to, and I understand what Mr. Funny wants, but Mr. Funny doesn't work for the town. Amy Dexter is our accountant, and I want to see what I want to hear what our bonding people, this is more than we're presented to anybody. And I've said this before, and don't any of the parents, or anyone, this is not a yes or a no. This office represents every single person, and especially those in this room who've been in an elected office before, know that there are many in this town that this will be difficult for many of you. This is going to impact taxes significantly. Not to mention, we're about to get into a discussion about a $5 million operational override, which is, we have to have. As Chair Carroll says, when I quote, I said, we have to be in lockstep. We have to have that.
So, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
if you
I'm
will,
sorry.
That's
I'm
fine.
sorry.
It's
Go
fine.
ahead.
If you're willing to commit that
Yeah,
we'll
I just-
have a meeting either on, at some point prior to, when would the latest date be for the 7th?
No, we're not going to wait till the 7th.
Yeah.
We'll schedule it.
Next week, maybe?
Yeah.
You promise? I mean, you promised before, that's why I'm asking.
Listen, I gave a legitimate answer, and I was not going to schedule a vote without a number. And to be honest with you, until 10 o'clock this morning, we didn't have a number. And we did not, I was surprised. I thank Mr. Ork for getting it to us, because he didn't expect to have it until next week. And as he knew, I said, as soon as we get it, we'll schedule it then.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, so I accept that. I will withdraw my motion with the understanding that the need is not going away, the cost is not going down. The kids need this
I
to
get it.
happen.
I
And
get
so I look forward to putting that same motion forward in a week's time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I withdraw the motion.
Did you copy that, Lynn? Okay. Are we good? No, Ms. Musto, I apologize.
Thank you.
You've been awful quiet tonight.
I was listening. Hi, Mr. O'Rourke. Thank you for the presentation. So the Chapman Middle School, for instance, I looked it up online quickly tonight. Looks like they got, is it 57 million from MSBA on a $163 million project. So they got a significant amount of money for that project. I'm wondering, with the pricing that you're talking about per square foot, is that the finished with everything in it, or is that just the construction cost? And with that, did you shop that number to a couple of construction firms that do a lot of this stuff to see, is that really in line with what it would cost? You know, some of the bigger firms that do this kind of construction, is that a realistic number? So that would be important. With the new building, how many teachers do you anticipate for, I need some numbers on how many teachers you anticipate, staff, custodians, operating those buildings. Do we have costs for a new building for that, as well as for the preschool? How many students in each one, and how many students could it accommodate? Because I know you're building for a certain amount. What are the class sizes? So I think these are all really important questions that we should know about. And of course, we need to know what the final cost would be per 100,000 per person. You know, I think I talked about that before, because we need to know what the impact is for residents on a proposal like this. And I guess I will finally, I will say that, as Chair Wells said, you know, we're looking at an operational override too. And that includes, of course, some money for the school, which is important, because if you have a building and you don't have staff, what good is having a building? So I think we need to understand what that is first, from Mr. Milano and Amy Dexter, what that really, those numbers mean. Because if we're asking people for overrides or debt exclusion, whatever kind of override it is, we need to understand what the numbers are. And we still have, you know, fire stations that are, yes, it's the Hurley Amendment, but we have ones that are coming up. We have a lot of things going on, so we need to understand a bigger, fuller picture. Thank you.
Okay.
So quick question too.
just-
Oh, go ahead, you want to answer? I'm sorry.
Yeah, there were
Go ahead,
questions.
I
I thought you
apologize.
wanted me to respond to them.
Sure.
So
If you have any of the answers, that's great.
do my best to round out as best I can. So the MSBA numbers that you're quoting for Weymouth that are there, every MSBA number that they have there is a percentage of reimbursement is based on social economic factors. So Weymouth compared to Milton is different. So if you're looking at straight percentages between the two of them, you have to look at what Milton would get for a percentage. I can find that out and relay it to you. The other part that plays in there is that percentage that's advertised to them gets diluted over the project. So as we introduce additional things, partly there, for example, I mentioned the world languages spaces, they wouldn't reimburse us for that. So that percentage of reimbursement actually goes down. So that's more cost that we'd have to carry as a town. Your question on cost estimate, if we've run it by other construction firms or anything like that, we haven't. The cost estimator we're using right now, Peter Bradley from PMC Consulting, is the cost estimator that does schools throughout the district. Through the two architecture teams that we interviewed for this project, he was on both teams because he is the guy that does these cost estimates at this point. A typical large construction firm really wouldn't touch this because they don't have the finite details on there, for example, when they would bid a job. So looking at this and using what Peter's familiarity with it, they wouldn't have. And then finally, the teachers and staff that you're talking about. Keep in mind, the kids are already here. We're relocating these kids to a larger school. The teachers associated with the 7th grade would relocate over there. The teachers associated with the 8th grade would relocate over there. Now, a gym teacher that's teaching at the Pierce right now for 3 grade levels, yes, you'd have to hire a new gym teacher. MSBA produces a template that you have to fill out, and we're following MSBA guidelines, that will fill out, that basically gives that analysis there of what the school is going to need for staffing, what the cost of that's going to be, and then we're going to work with the district on there to basically develop what of those staffing already exist so we can take them out of the equation. And that's part of the next phase of this project that we're going through there, because obviously there'll be an impact operationally for it.
Just a follow, can I just ask?
Sure.
So, but that, because I've met with Dr., that number is going to have to roll into an annual budget or an operational override if it was that great, correct?
Correct.
It's not part of this, it's not part of your.
Correct. Yes. So if we're on track for 2027 and we're aligning this with that override, yes. But if this gets delayed and we push it out much further, that's where I would defer for the finance groups to kind of look at that. Yeah.
Thank you. So my
Sorry.
follow-up would be, so things like, custodians and, principals and things like that. There are numbers for that too, but that would all have to be
Correct.
put in.
Yeah.
Not for the building project, but
Yeah. And
for the operational.
Yeah, in the middle school, if there has to be a second principal for that, obviously that's similar, like the analogy I used for the gym teacher. The preschool component, though, keep in mind, we're moving the entire preschool from where they are in the district here, the preschool coordinator, all the administration associated with that. So all those positions, it's not like we're building a new preschool and hiring all new teachers. They all already exist in the district.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Mrs. Zoll?
This is more of a comment than a question, so please forgive me because I hate it when people do that. But it really is not the job of this board to approve or not approve this new school. It's the job of this board to let the town make the decision about whether we should have this new school or not. And to the extent that we have seen people turning out the interest in this, I feel it would be vastly irresponsible for us not to listen to our citizens and to make sure that we are giving them the choice to make their voices heard on the day that we know that most citizens go to vote. So for that reason, I did have a question. I knew I had a question to set that up. So Mr. O'Rourke, assuming that this board does the right thing by allowing the citizens to vote on this in November, will the school building committee be available to do public information sessions to any citizens in Milton who have questions about this? Could they come to you or to the board and ask the questions about the classrooms, the costs, the staffing, the details? Could you commit to being available to do something like that?
Definitely. So similar to what we did with the land swap, there are a number of public information sessions, one-on-ones, whether it's a Zoom meeting, live meeting in a large audience like this. We will do that. One of my last slides when I was looking at timeline on there, the last months between now and November, I listed as engagement, and that's our intent. So we made a lot of progress. We have a number, we have a design, we have graphics we can share with everybody to answer questions. We're going to further refine these going into November. And having those, we want feedback from the town. We want input on additional things that are there.
Thank you, because I think an informed citizenry is best. And I think that if we give them the opportunity to make a decision and we give them the information that they need to make the decision, then we need to trust the decision of the citizens. Thank you.
All good? We're well beyond the 20 that you told me.
That was,
not your
that was,
fault.
that was
It's
for
not
the
your
slides,
That was
sir.
probably on the
Sorry.
Mr. Chair.
I got more if you want.
No, thank you, we're good, we're good. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, now, we're going to move on to public comments. And I will start with, if each person just come up, state their name, and I have to set the, hold on, I haven't done this for a few weeks. So we will allow a total of 21 minutes. Mr. Milano will keep the time on the total time allot. Each speaker, I'd ask if you would keep your comments to 3 minutes. I will allow you to know when there's 30 seconds left, and I just ask everyone to, I know this is a very important issue for our town, let's just respect the one commonality, I say it very often, and I'll repeat it again tonight. No matter what you think on any issue, the one commonality amongst all of us is here is 0286 is our zip code, and this is where we live. So I will be. Good evening.
Good evening. Joe Curran, Grafton Ave. Spitting venom and dividing our town is not helpful. Leadership and their actions speak louder than any words. As a leader, you need to understand a win-at-all-cost attitude carries heavy price tags, and that's why so many people here tonight to show that we are watching what this board does next. I support the schools. I understand the town has space issues now. My school friends and I were victims of the 1979-1980 budget cuts, where Cunningham Junior High School closed. We attended 3 different schools in 3 years because of the shifting space needs of the school. I have voted in every override in this town since 1986, and I have always voted yes for the schools. Dissatisfaction is a boiling point. I don't understand why our certified detailed total construction cost budget hasn't been presented to the school building committee. As you know, the residents have asked the select board to do their job and place the debt exclusion on the November ballot, but there hasn't been as much conversation directed at the select board, the school building board, with the same level of urgency as requested of this committee. As of today, we've, I guess, just seen the numbers, and again, I wrote this before the numbers were presented, but the school building committee had an opportunity to meet yesterday and talk about this and didn't. The school building committee doesn't have any agenda items set for the month of August at all for us to see this detailed budget, the certified budget, the total construction project budget, which the total project cost, which is important. I saw some confusion here tonight about what is the difference between a construction budget and a total project budget and a construction budget. At a minimum, as was discussed, it's 30% more for the total construction cost. And I think that it's important that this board understands that. Construction costs typically refer to expenses directly related to the physical building and the structure. And total project costs are the project costs that encompass all expenses related to the completion and delivery of the building project. I was also surprised to learn that there's going to be a $500,000 item on tonight's agenda to vote for the schools. And I understand that there's going to be some financial accounting that has to be taken from ARPA money.
30 seconds, Mr. Khan.
From ARPA money. Highly unusual. This board certified the budgets for all the other departments, including the school, several weeks ago. Now we're learning the schools weren't able to get their budget in, and now we're doing some fancy accounting methods to account for that $500,000 shortfall that's come before this board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Khan. Mr. Fall.
Good evening. My name is Greg Fall. I have lived at 172 Granite Ave for about 37 years. With my wife Joan, we have 2 daughters who graduated from Milton Public Schools in 2008. I'm here tonight to advocate for the town students and the taxpayers. And no matter when you decide to put the debt exclusion for the new schools on the ballot, please look at some of the short-term solutions to support the students and staff in the present. I understand that it's a dire situation of inadequate space that has been talked about for the last 5 years. And given that fact that the new buildings are a few years away anyway, what's going to be done to mitigate the overcrowding issue right now? I know they're working on the Cunningham build-out, the 4th floor build-out, but questions of the modular classrooms being built in the interim to help alleviate the overcrowding. The students and staff deserve a solution for the present as well as the future. And Milton is the first town that I'm aware of that's asking its citizens to fully fund new schools without any state funding. As you do your due diligence in deciding when the debt exclusion should go on the ballot, I ask you to make sure to answer some of the questions that will impact each taxpayer in Milton. Many of us have fixed incomes and tight budgets and need to have your best estimate of the cost we can expect. There's still many unanswered questions now. One of my first questions was on the total number which we got tonight for the 173 million, and that's wow. But what's going to be the yearly cost of running that schools? That's going to be added on. The yearly maintenance costs, the staffing and benefits cost, even though some or most staff will be moving with the schools, there are additional costs for additional staff that have to be hired for that. Percentage of yearly salary increase in benefits, that tags on too. What interest rates are we paying on the loans the town's going to take out? Will this result in additional overrides of operational budgets in the future? And also, given that the school committee last week disclosed an unexpected $500,000 shortfall, how can we be assured after adding 2 additional school buildings that there won't be similar costly surprises?
30 seconds, Mr. Fall.
I urge you all to consider these questions and more as you think about what will be the best interest for all the citizens of Milton to vote on a well-crafted ballot question. Also, I ask that whatever town board is responsible for communication about this project, add a frequently asked question page on their website so voters will have an easy and accurate reference for common questions regarding this project moving forward. I thank you for your time and your consideration and all the hard work. I know this is a difficult task for everyone involved, selectmen, all the boards, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lizio.
Good evening, members of the Select Board. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. Thank you also for having a thoughtful conversation. It benefits everyone when we have a difference of viewpoints. I think that gets us much farther as a community. Just want a couple quick things. First, I want to talk about the citizen access. Sorry, Warren Lizio, 160 Alvin Avenue. Thank you. I'd like to talk just for a minute about the increasing the access of information for the citizens of Milton. I think we can do this in 2 simple and free ways. The first is we have a wealth of information on YouTube from all of the videos produced by Milton Public Access. There's many people in this room and many people out there watching and listening that are very keen on watching those videos and staying up to date on what's happening in the town. If the Select Board would kindly provide the copy of their agenda to the Milton Public Access, they could put timestamps on the videos so that people could quickly get through the information, and I think that would have a huge benefit overall. The second thing is that I'd like to ask the Select Board to also talk with the committees about submitting minutes on a regular basis. For instance, when I was on the Master Plan Implementation Committee, we were reviewing the bicycle master plan, and when I went to the town website to find the minutes for the bicycle committee, there were none. We had no information whatsoever about how much progress and effort they put into their work, and which had then been submitted to us on the master plan. So I think this, I asked the select board to request that all committees submit minutes, especially ones that they have, meetings in which they have voted, and minutes for all meetings should be required. As appointed representatives of town business, I believe residents deserve to know how committees are progressing with their assignments and how how they are utilizing their assigned authority. So in both of these simple ways, I think we can increase the transparency for the Milton citizens. And then, just quickly, with the $173 million number that we just got, right? I don't know how much we went over on the fire stations off the top of my head, but it seems to me that we typically go over budget. It's just the nature of the business, right? So let's say that we get, it costs around $200 million, right? And tonight, if we're going to talk about a $5 million debt exclusion, which would cost roughly $550 per
Thousand.
well, so
House,
It's an
so
operational
yeah, that's cool.
debt
As a proxy, let's say how many households there are. There are 8,901
15
parcels of
seconds.
land in Milton, right? So if you divide that amount up, the 55. Sorry, excuse me, I'm getting thrown up. The $5 million by those number of parcels, it's about $500 per parcel, right? So
Thank you. Thank you.
when you,
Thank you.
is that it?
That's it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Ms. Haggerty.
Good evening. My name's Megan Haggerty. I live at 7 Willoughby Road. Is this on? Okay.
It's on. You're on.
Thank you. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 2. I'm also the mother of 2 Milton Public School students, one who's entering the Tucker and a 7th grader at Pierce. In my day job, I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. Tonight, I just want to encourage you
Do you
to...
have any money?
I'm not talking about that. Tonight, I just want to encourage you to continue to consider placing the debt exclusion override on the November ballot. Any further delay comes at a cost to the Milton taxpayers due to the construction climate, for vertical construction and roads and bridges. The cost escalation it's not going anywhere. Good work has been done on the part of this team at all levels of the project, from public process, project management, and design. But most importantly, we need to act now for our kids. Each year, the classrooms are further constrained due to the rising enrollment and the static facilities. Those of us who volunteer on the PTOs hear from our principals about how the facilities are being constrained. And the MPS staff do an incredible job of navigating this situation, but it's only going to last for so long. My family's experience in the Milton Public Schools began in 2016 when my oldest did not receive a Boston Public Schools preschool assignment. If anybody has ever gone through that experience with BPS, you know that not getting that pre-K assignment means you're not getting a quality school. And this was devastating for me because I grew up in Dorchester and I really wanted to raise my kids there. However, the economics of Greater Boston is different today than it was when my parents were raising me in the 80s and 90s, and it's prohibitively expensive to both own a home and send kids to private school. And Catholic schools are just not an option for us because my family is interfaith. My experience isn't unique. In Milton, many of the residents of this town have moved here from other places precisely because of the quality of our schools. And I have to say the MPS community has far exceeded my expectations. The dedication of the staff, the commitment to social and emotional learning, and academics are great. Like, all of these kids are getting an amazing experience. Milton is in demand today because we're a community that's on the border of Boston with excellent schools, a diverse population, and invested residents. It's the responsibility of this body to exercise leadership through making tough decisions, which you're doing by weighing all sides of this. But the difficult choices the difficult choices that we fail to make today become the crises of tomorrow. If we sacrifice the quality of the Milton Public Schools, we sacrifice the economic health of this town. So let's not kill the goose that lays the golden egg. Now is the time to capitalize on the good work that's been done by the team. Continue to ask some questions, but consider to get this vote done as quickly as we can. The families of this town who also vote would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm looking. Ms. Rosemarin, is she here? Oh, this, I see her.
Did people leave that were on the list?
No, no. I just couldn't shoot. Floor is yours, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, with your permission, I would like to give my spot over to School Committee Chair Lizzie Carroll.
She's already on. I got her. She's here.
Yeah, I'm just
How much time we have left?
want to be sure that she gets.
How many?
to speak.
9 minutes. I have room for 3 speakers. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Ada Rosemarin, 32 Columbine Road. As many of you know, I'm a former school committee member from 2017 to 23. I was the chair of the Facilities Advisory Committee that conducted the first space needs study to address overcrowding in our schools in 2019. I served as a vice chair of the School Building Committee for its first 3 years, and I can tell you that the School Building Committee has been working hard on this challenge for 5 years. And believe me, this is not a rush. Back in the early 2000s, I was a treasurer for the Friends of the Milton Schools, the campaign to rebuild and renovate all 6 of Milton Public Schools. We brought this question to the voters 3 times before it was ultimately passed. Back then, my youngest child was in kindergarten. Now I'm a proud member of the grandmothers for Milton Public Schools. The bold action taken and courage shown by our former town leaders and residents solved a massive problem with 6 schools that were obsolete and falling apart. Our entire town is proud of our new schools since they were built and open. Our property values have soared ever since. Milton is a desirable town for young families with our proximity to Boston, our diversity, and our excellent schools. Today, the stars have aligned. The land has been identified. A thoughtful plan is in place to address overcrowding at all levels. A price has been calculated. The land swap was passed by town meeting, and any day now before July 31st, it will be approved by the legislature and signed by the governor. The time has come to show courage and be bold for our children and our town's future. We have an opportunity to let the voters decide on this matter during a presidential election when many more voters will go to the polls than at a local election in the spring. Our supporters will be energized by a victory in the fall and will be back to work hard again for an overdue operational override. This is a big moment and decision for our town. I'm glad you're going to take some time before you make a decision. But let's seize this moment, please. Let Milton vote in November to move our town forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Croninger. Mr. Croninger, what do you think? How much time?
Hello, everybody. Mark Croninger, Precinct 7, Melbourne Road. Hope you can hear me. Thank you very much for all you guys have been doing to work on this. Thanks Sean and that group for all the hard work they put in. I'm the father of 2 boys who both went to Milton Public Schools and graduated from Milton Public Schools. I've always supported the schools. Both of my sons were very active in the schools and activities and sports. One of my sons was at the 1909 building and came home one day and told me that a piece of a tile fell right onto his desk during the middle of class. So I'm familiar with the need to update schools and make things right. But as the old school saying goes, there's no such thing as a free lunch. I've heard a lot of talk tonight about people saying make the hard decision, make the right decision, it's your responsibility. I would say the hardest decision would be to do your due diligence and walk through these parking lots every time you have to come to a meeting and listen to people with their kids chant, do the schools, vote the schools, like it's some easy little issue that can be solved in a second. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars here, an unprecedented amount of money, I'm sure, for any school spending in this town. I've heard it compared to Weymouth or Brighton or Newton. Those towns are at least twice the size or more
of our small town Milton. So those are kind of apples and oranges comparisons when it comes to cost of school funding. And as was previously mentioned, most of those schools receive funding from the state. I believe we've been denied 4 times over the past several years funding from the state. Why would that be? Does the state think that our need is not quite as dire as maybe we all believe it is? Maybe so. Are there other people that are in line that haven't had the type of upgrades from the state that we enjoyed over the past couple of decades? Maybe so. That all being said, we need a real fiscal accountability to the taxpayers of this town. When I was out campaigning for town meeting, not only were there people that had kids that were concerned about the schools here and upgrading schools or overcrowding, which I totally get, but there were several people, elderly people, that said, I'm afraid I'm going to be taxed out of this town. Again, there is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. And maybe people think we're the federal government that can just print money at a whim, but we can't. We're Milton, and we have to deal with what we have. And it's not the school board's money, and it's not your money, and it's not the town's money. It's the people who pay the taxes of these towns. I would like to see an estimator created that shows what the cost per taxpayer per $100,000 of assessed value on their home will be before there's any discussion of putting this on a ballot in November. Okay? Franklin just went through the same thing where they were asking for a meager amount of money compared to this enchilada, and the town created an estimator. People could go on what their assessed value is, put it in, and they would see an estimate of their tax burden that this was going to cause. We owe that to the citizens. We owe that to the people. Hey, if you got kids in school, you're going to be paying more too. But there are people here that are on fixed incomes that are going to be driven out of this town, and that's not fair.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Very much. So I have one person online that's been waiting?
There's 4 now.
Right, so I only have enough time, so I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to take the next speaker present, because this room is full, and we could go for 45 minutes, 2 hours and 45 minutes. So I'm going to take Ms. Munger, and then Chair Carroll, I'm going to save you to speak when we get to, is that all right? We'll have you speak when we get to the next item. You can speak to this.
I could defer to Lizzie.
I think, or they could just speak together.
I'd rather give the chair her own time. You're on the clock, so why don't you sit down and...
All right, I'm on the clock.
Yes.
Jackie Munger, 63 Granite Place, town meeting member for Precinct 7. Thanks for letting me speak. So I actually have 3 children in the school system right now, preschool, going into kindergarten, going into 3rd, so definitely in the thick of it and super passionate about this. I actually ran for town meeting member last year, specifically because the land swap was on the ballot for that fall. So really invested in this. As others have said, Milton schools are the crown jewel of Milton, right? It's not all that matters, but it is the best thing about Milton, period. So at this moment, we have that opportunity to do the right thing by putting this decision on the ballot for November and allowing residents to vote. The facts have been shared. The schools are overwhelmingly crowded. How could we say no to further pursuing the build of the school? No facts are going to change. The dollar amount is high, but nothing is going to change. We can't afford to kick the can and compound the problems. Expenses will be higher for building and other accommodation. Timelines will be longer. Classrooms are going to continue to be more crowded. And what about our teachers? Do you think that they are going to continue to stay and work in conditions that are not setting them or their students up for success? Why would they? Teachers are in demand. They could go anywhere and they could have a smaller classroom. My 3rd grader's class for French is 26 children for one teacher. Single stream, 26 kids, 5 years. How is that manageable? Sean already said earlier that 369 kids are going to be in my incoming kindergartner's class. That's more than 20 kids per class for kindergarten. This is not an easy job for you all. I totally respect that. And I don't envy your position, but it is still the job. What's the quote? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same result, right? We can't keep operating the same way and expecting different results. I think someone else should say, like, we are where we are. we can't do anything about it. I don't agree with that. I think we actually need to be creative, and we need to increase our tax base by a bigger commercial base or other solutions. Our hands aren't tied. We're not expecting to pay $173 million tomorrow. We have some time, right, to prepare for this and to make some changes. And it's a hard job, but we have to start working and figuring out what we can do.
30 seconds.
So I know the same people that support the schools will also support the operational override. We can do both. We just have to figure it out, but we can make the right decision for our children, who I know we all agree are the most important. Thanks.
Thank you. What do we have for time?
I have 1:30.
Dr. Carroll? Good evening, thanks.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Lizzie Carroll, 37 Randolph Ave. I'm here tonight as the chair of Milton School Committee. We met on July 15th for our update from Sean O'Rourke about the exciting preliminary design for the new school that you saw tonight. Since the cost was not yet available last week, we set another meeting for next Tuesday morning to have all the information when we as a school committee vote our recommendation on the school project as proposed, including the idea of putting it on the November ballot. In last week's discussion, school committee members continued to express what we have been saying for years, that the severity of our overcrowding requires a new school to be built ASAP. I'm really glad to hear you say tonight that you plan to meet within these next 2 weeks. That is actually the main thing I wanted to ask you to do, to vote before the August 7th deadline on whether to put a debt exclusion override for this project on the November ballot, as so many of our constituents have been calling on you to do. The school committee will provide you with our formal recommendation early next week. As the select board, of course, you are responsible to make the decision. So thank you for conducting your due diligence as Milton's governing body and scheduling a vote where you each go on the record with your position on this consequential matter before August 7th. The essential question is whether and how we will proactively address the prolonged harmful effects of persistent overcrowding on our students more than 5 years after the town created the school building committee to address this problem. You must weigh many factors as you consider the prospect of a debt exclusion override, not least of which, as has been mentioned, our need to also pursue an operational override in the coming year. Both of these will be necessary for Milton Public Schools to continue providing the level of service our residents expect and deserve. As you have mentioned previously, Chair Wells, you and I have discussed as chairs how we must and will work together in the best interests of Milton residents who include more than 4,400 MPS students and their families. I stand ready to partner with you on pursuing the operational override that all of our town departments will need to avoid disastrous cuts in services. Chair Wells, you refer to this challenging situation as sailing into uncharted waters. And it's true, this high-stakes moment demands our total focus. But your metaphor also reminds me that, as President Franklin Roosevelt said, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor.
That's true.
Although I sit in a different seat from you all, I trust that we, as the leaders of Milton, can rise to this challenge and provide the leadership that you all have pointed out, we as elected officials owe to Milton's residents. They deserve to know where we all stand on whether and when they will get to make their voices heard at the ballot box, which is all that's being asked. Therefore, please follow through to schedule that special meeting within the next 2 weeks so you can take your vote before the August 7th deadline. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. She knows I spend a lot of my time in the ocean, and I know a lot about the sea. That concludes Citizen Speak. I know I look at the list, and I chose tonight to pick the people who took the time to come here, and even though we could allow people by Zoom to weigh in, but you've been coming here for several weeks now. We understand the significance of where this is at. So thank you all, and we're going to move to item 4. Item 4. Who's speaking? Item 4 is discussion approval, the American Rescue Plan and Act reallocation. I guess Dr. Burrows, Dr. Pavlicek. Thank you all for coming.
Mr. Chair, I'll maybe give everybody a minute to
Oh, yeah,
depart.
that's fine. We want to take a break? There any ice cream left? No. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, there are a few action items under this agenda item related to our ARPA funding.
Yeah.
But first, I can discuss one of the reasons we're here. The school department has ended fiscal '24 in need of some additional funding to erase a budget deficit. Dr. Pavlicek, Dr. Burrows informed us of this in the past couple of weeks, and so we've been working to identify potential sources of funding to resolve that issue. The request, as it stands, is $415,000. The higher than unexpected cost is mainly driven by special education and related expenses. I'll let Dr. Burrows and Dr. Pavlicek answer any questions about that or provide any additional commentary if that would be helpful. And then I'm happy to speak to a suggestion on how to resolve it, which would involve changing some of the allocations on the federal funding that we've received. As we wind down all of the federal funding, we have some money left that has been allocated but not yet spent, which would be helpful in resolving this issue. I think, Mr. Chair, it might make more sense to speak with the school department, then I can speak to more about some solutions.
Ball's yours. Don't jump at once. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for coming in.
Excited to talk about it. Related to our closing out FY24 and why we stand before you today, just to kind of give you an overview of these special ed costs, which weren't predicted and couldn't have been predicted when the budget was formed for FY24 in the fall of FY23. The 22 rather. The total cost of out-of-district placements was, we didn't have that percentage yet. It went up an unprecedented 16% for the following year. That, along with special ed transportation, which increased due to more evaluations, more students, both in kind of residential and non-residential placements, increased $800,000 beyond budget. And we additionally, the transportation costs and the out-of-district placement costs in total was roughly $2 million. We had in reserve $1.5 million. And so we are short roughly that $415,000 right now. I will say that these costs are not costs that are optional costs. These are costs that are required for students. I also know that when we run into situations like this where the costs are what the costs are, our initial reaction can be to think that these costs shouldn't be happening. And I do want to say that these are costs that are needed by our students. So just in the context of our discussion about this and our need for these services, I just want to kind of put that out that these are not things that we want to change and have go away, meaning we want to continue to provide what our students need. That being said, related to our conversation around space and size, one of the things that our new special Director of Student Services has identified is the ability to bring more of our programming in-house within our school district to reduce some of these costs, but that's a space issue in terms of being able to stand up some of those programs, because we just right now do not have space to do that. But we are working on bringing more of those out-of-district students back into the district where it makes sense. That's not going to be true for every student, but that can be true for some students that we have the scale and capacity to serve. Do you have anything else you want to add? Or
along those lines, just for some figures on it, before COVID, we had roughly 48 students in out-of-district placements. Now we're at 67. That's a huge change in 5 years. Out-of-district placements can run in excess of $500,000 for one student. It doesn't take doesn't take many changes in that to do a lot to the budget. And in transportation costs, it's also the transportation costs of the small buses that bring, students who are in district to school. If you're looking for a great money-making side job, you should open a sped transportation company, because they get about $20 per student per day to bring students, from your house to your local school. And if you work that out, that's, $3,600 per student who rides those small buses. It's quite.
Are you making a futuristic announcement here?
Yeah, no. It's not enough for me, thank you.
Okay.
But if you're looking, it is.
Is it for me?
It's
Oh, so, I get it. Questions, anyone? So, anyone, so or do I want to let Nick?
Oh, I have a bunch of questions.
So do you want to let Nick present how he wants to do this first?
that'd be
It's up to you, I'll do whatever you want.
I know what Nick's proposal is, so.
Okay, so you want to let him make it first, and then you can, or do you want to ask some questions first?
I think we should ask some questions first.
All right, go ahead. The floor is yours.
So I found out about, for those that don't know, this is my second year now of being the chair of the Finance Committee. Prior to that, I served on the Warrant Committee and served another year here on the Select Board. I've been dealing with our town budget now for 8 years. The first time I heard about this was on July 15th at 9:27 p.m. I'm assuming that you guys knew about it prior to 9:27 p.m. on July 15th. Mr. Chair, you've been meeting with the school committee weekly, as you said at your last meeting, and
Just the chair.
well, the chair of the school committee. These are people that should know about what's happening with their budget. My question is, why didn't we know before July 15th, which is literally the last day it is for us to make transfers from other accounts? It seems quite odd to me, Mr. Chair, that this came about at 9:30 at night on the 15th, the absolute last day for us to actually move money around in a way that would be more appropriate than taking money and moving money, which now I am not actually sure we can do without a town meeting vote, and that's why I asked to make sure that our town attorney was here. I have a lot of questions and concerns about this. I was told multiple times by Dr. Pavlicek that they would be able to cover the cost of the special ed, that there would be ways for them to do this. At this point in time, we are looking at $415,000 more that I have no idea about. Not one person from the school committee contacted me. Not one person informed me that this was happening. And again, I've been dealing with our budget for 8 years. That to me is a shame. The select board right now I do not believe, has the authority to unilaterally increase the FY24 budget without town meeting approval, even if it is coming from the ARPA funding, which I know is different because we don't have to do a big vote on that. But we are changing the bottom lines of all of this budgeting. These ARPA funds that that Mr. Milano is about to ask us to move was something that has been appropriated for the broadband committee. Now let me just say this for the record. I have been in complete support of this broadband committee since I first found out about it. You walk from one room to another room in my house and you lose cell signal. There is a massive problem with our broadband here in our town. And this committee has been working hard for more than 5 years to try and make this infrastructure a priority for the citizens of Milton. And now we are making up for a $415,000 loss from the school committee that we didn't know about, again, until 9/27 on the last day that we could move anything from any other department. That, to me, Mr. Chair, is a real problem. Again, I was not notified that there was even a blip of something happening until then. This is not okay. If we had learned about this before the 15th of July, we could have moved between the departments with no problem, with no need to go back to town meeting, because that's something that we vote upon. But right now, what we're doing after the 15th of July, I do not believe that we can do without town meeting approval, and I would request that our attorney for the town weigh in on this. This is no small matter. This is a shame that this is happening.
Oh, I know that.
because Mr. Pavlicek did tell me that this was something that they would be able to cover. I am not here to say that the schools are not in need of this money. Obviously, we have to pay for it. Obviously, we have to cover it. But there's a lot of concerns here that the notice came at 9:27 p.m. on the last day. So, Mr. Chair, if we could ask the town council whether or not this is even a valid thing for us to do, I would appreciate that.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
Because I was out of state, so
Sure.
I didn't know, I knew.
You knew nothing
What?
about this?
No.
Nobody had mentioned it to you?
No, I'm not talking back.
Okay, me neither.
So what happened at 9:27 at night? What did you send an email?
You sent an email.
Oh, okay, all right.
That was the first email that we got,
All right,
came
so I
from Nick
didn't-
Milano.
I didn't know that.
9:27, 7:15.
Okay.
Can I
How many
just,
want to bring Peter?
I just want to, can I give
Yeah,
some
absolutely, you can do- yeah.
context in terms of
Yes.
how we arrived at this thought and suggestion? So, in terms of transfers, what are our options? So
Right.
I'll just go ahead and start there. So the reserve fund is one option, which was drawn down for a number of items. We cannot do appropriation transfers. We can't take money from the police department and
Right.
move it to the school department. That we can't do.
Right.
So the reserve fund was the only option there, and there's about $240,000 in the reserve fund. That requires warrant committee approval. So that, due to timeline, was not a possible option for us. Appropriation transfers are never on the docket. We just can't do that. We can't take money from town departments and move to the school department. That's not allowed under state law.
Free cash.
Free cash requires a town meeting vote.
Yeah.
On July 1, free cash went away. Free cash no longer exists once we move from June 30 until July 1st. So we don't have any free cash now, and we won't until it's certified by the Department of Revenue. Typical time frame would be, sometime in October. So that led us to other available funding sources, which are the grant funds. The select board is in control of the grant funding, and this would not be an increase to the school department appropriation. Their school department appropriation would stay the same. These costs would be charged to a grant account on our books, and that is something the board can do if it so chooses to use these grant monies for that purpose. So the school budget doesn't change. Costs borne by the school department would be charged under this grant account, which is what we've been doing for school nurse, for social and emotional support staff at the school department, for the town's social worker in the health department was charged to the grant account, not to the town budgets.
What grant account are you speaking of?
It's our ARPA,
ARPA.
our grant
ARPA
accounts
grant
for all the
account.
ARPAs.
That's
And then-
already
Yep.
finished, right? There's no more money in it. We're actually taking something from another department.
Well, that's what I'm
Okay.
getting at. So in terms of what can we charge to it, we can charge really what the select board chooses to charge to it within the rules of what the Treasury has laid out as what those dollars can be spent towards. So it's under the select board's control. In terms of what is available and unallocated, everything has been allocated, as Ms. Bradley points out. We have two tranches of money. One that is held by the town to be used under the select board's control. The other is money that we have to access through Norfolk County, but under the select board's control. So we have allocated this money in various ways over the past several years. We have spent most of this money over the past several years. What remains allocated but unspent is approximately $550,000, which was allocated to the municipal broadband project for the town INET. And this was under the category of revenue replacement through Norfolk County. So this gets a little tricky in terms of all these different names and terminologies and rules, but the way the U.S. Treasury set out rules on ARPA money, it said set stipulations on how it can be used. Water and sewer infrastructure is the big one that catches people's attention. Broadband was included in that category, but Norfolk County has not seen a broadband application. There is, however, another bucket of money under revenue replacement, which the Treasury said can be used for anything that a town does business doing. So basically anything can go under the revenue replacement. So we had earmarked this $550,000 for broadband to come under the revenue replacement category, which was flexible, and the county would have approved that. However, with this new change and how we need to find some money, with our limitations around the reserve fund, with our limitations around free cash and town meeting, it turns us to the ARPA funding and what can we do to resolve the deficit, not end the year with a deficit, as we're going out to bond potentially for a new project. We don't want to have questions raised about financial management. We don't want to risk our debt rating. So I felt this was worth discussing and bringing to the select board as a possible solution. And as Ms. Bradley points out, this solves one problem in front of us. It does not solve the broadband problem, which is what the project that money is allocated for is to replace the institutional network that connects the town and school facilities to the internet. That is a system we are paying Comcast $12,000 a year for. It is end of life, probably past end of life, really. So that remains a project that has to move forward. The issue is now we have to go find other money to make up for this change if the board approves it. We have funded and paid for the design of that replacement network, which would connect all the town and school facilities with a new fiber system. What remains to be done is building it out, buying the fiber, and installing the fiber. In addition to the work towards the INET, the Broadband Committee is also working with $48,000 of ARPA funding for fiber to the home as a master plan. That work is ongoing now. There's a survey out on our website, please take it, which addresses the next question that the town has talked about, which is, should we engage more deeply in potentially building out or thinking about fiber to the home? It's a separate process, would require additional funding over and above anything ever allocated under ARPA, and it is still ongoing. That work continues. That money isn't affected, and please do take the survey. That's online. We have about 160 responses so far. We want to keep building that up. So anyway, that's the long, kind of winded explanation. Is the money is available because it hasn't been spent. It has certainly been allocated by this board. The board would need to reallocate it away from broadband, move it to the schools to solve the problem right now. However, we would then need to start working on a funding plan for the institutional network and get that to town meeting and have that move forward so we can replace our INET and not have 6-strand fiber anymore running through the town, to which something happens and could be problematic. So happy to take further questions if there are any on this.
Let me just finish up where you're at. So I'm still on your first question. Do you still want town council to comment?
I'm going to want town council, to comment, because I've got some other questions.
Could you join us, Attorney Mello?
So if I may, Mr. Chair, as being the person that has served on the ARPA committee as part of the finance committee, we made this process very transparent. We made it so that all of the businesses, all of the community groups, everybody that was coming forward to us knew what was happening with the money, and the funding was spent in a proper, transparent way, which is something we often talk about here at this committee, is the transparency and the vetting. And so that happened with the previous ARPA appropriations. I'm wondering if we should have a town meeting for a post-closing appropriation, or if this is even an appropriate thing to be doing without a town meeting approval, since they approved this money to be going towards the INET. If this money does go towards the school, we have zero plan to have the INET money returned. That was a project that was going to be finished by the end of this year. And there is nothing right now that shows that we have any plan to reappropriate that money from any source. Town meeting was also guaranteed that this was money that was going to be given to them. So right now we are above and beyond the law, in my opinion, because town meeting is the law. So walk me through how this is an okay thing.
Sure. So Peter Mello, Murphy Hesse 2 Milligan Town Council. So I guess off the cuff, ordinarily this is something I might. Well, let me say this. In terms of the select board's authority to reallocate and the scope of the permissible purposes of the money, my understanding and the understanding that I would opine about off the cuff as I am is completely consistent with Nick's explanation. In ordinary circumstances, I might run it by the DLS, but I will say, listening to Nick's explanation, it's totally consistent with my understanding that this wouldn't require town meeting approval, and that the select board could has the unilateral independent authority to reallocate the money, and that it is within the permissible scope of expenditures under the rules that govern ARPA money.
And is it possible for us to have a town meeting for post-closing appropriation?
Is it possible? I mean, the select board can always call a special town meeting.
I think the word
necessary. Necessary, right? I mean, I guess the distinction, there's a distinction to be drawn whether it's possible or whether it's necessary. I don't, as I'm sitting here right now, again off the cuff, without having drilled down in all the particulars of it, I don't believe it's necessary. I believe the select board has unilateral authority to take the vote.
So the select board is changing the budget, and that's something that you think is okay? Because what he's saying is that it's like an accounting issue. But what's really happening is that part of the town money, part of the ARPA funding that is for the town, is now going towards the school. So we're changing the budget.
But that's the select board's choice, and the select board put it towards broadband in the first place. The select board can say, hey, never mind, we're going to put it towards this in the second place. And the select board has chosen to fund positions that are within the school department, not paid by taxpayers, and has, through this process, through the finance committee and the select board, has funded numerous positions. It's not in the budget anywhere. It does not appear anywhere in the budget.
When they put out their budget, they say these positions are paid by ARPA.
But it's not appropriated in any way. It's not voted upon by town meeting. Town meeting has no say on those positions whatsoever. No. And it's same for our health department, the social worker that we have in the health department. In the first year, it was not in the budget, anywhere in the budget. This year, in fact, in the fiscal 25 budget, we are paying about $400,000 of our health insurance. We're going to pay out of ARPA funding. That was one of the tools we used to get to a balanced budget out of the Treasury ARPA. That was not appropriated by town meeting, was not on the topic, it was not in the warrant article for town meeting, it was in the commentary to provide context, but it was not a vote that town meeting had to take. The select board has spent nearly all the ARPA money directly without any further approval at town meeting or not.
Okay. What's the plan for replacing the 415?
That's what I was,
I mean, I will not take this vote. I will be a no vote on this until we have an actual plan in place that the 415 that was guaranteed to the INET broadband committee is restored.
No, I agree with that. It can go through the capital budget and be included in the capital budget. And I would also point out it does not have to be cash. It could be borrowed. We could use some borrowing authorization, pay for it over 15 to 20 years, depending on the life of the equipment. So there's a couple of different funding options. If we have strong free cash, it could be free cash. If we want to...
By the end of this year? That's when they were going to... If they had gotten this ARPA funding, this would be done by the end of the year.
Correct. No. It could
so
go to...
we're not going to be done by the end of the year.
If this board feels strongly about it, it could go to a fall town meeting. It does not have to wait for the annual town meeting, necessarily. It could go to a sooner town meeting whenever the board calls for one. But that would be the next opportunity to appropriate funding for it, would be either the next town meeting or the annual town meeting, so not by the end of this calendar year, in terms of getting the project complete.
This is a real shame, is all I'm going to say. It's a real shame.
Can I ask you a question? So let's have the reality of, can either doctor supply to us, what would you do if you don't get this? To me, that's the more pressing issue right now.
We would, there still is some money in the community schools funds that we would have to appropriate to this. There is some money in the food service fund that might be appropriate to appropriate to this. That's a little trickier. That's a federal program, and you have to be very careful about how you spend that money. But it would have to come from some other source that we would, have to look at in terms of what is currently in revolving funds.
But we may have to replace that. If you put that to this, then we may have to replace that.
Well, it would just have a smaller balance in some of those accounts.
Anyone else?
Thank you. Thank you. I think, I agree that this is, sort of caught us off guard with this. We didn't expect this, and we got it sort of last minute. And it's not a small chunk of change. It's quite a bit of money. Of course, special ed's important, and we want to pay for special ed. My question is, when you're looking at special ed costs, what factor are you using to anticipate increases? Because we all know that transportation increases every year. We all know the cost of education increases. So my question is, this came in at 16% over from what you sent us. But my question is, what percentage are you anticipating year to year? Because this is a huge gap. 16% is not 3 or 4%. This is a large amount of money. And you know, at a time when we're looking at an operational override as well, I mean, when I hear this, I'm thinking, well, you know, maybe we should be doing that right now because, you know, of what you're saying. So I'm trying to anticipate because we don't want to run into this the following years. So what factor are you using for anticipation of this?
We've been generally using 6% for medical and special ed related costs as an inflation factor over the last few years, where we were using 1 to 2% for most items. Those costs we were plugging in at 6%. I do say when this was approved by the state, the large rate increase, districts across the state went crazy. They all said, you can't, after the fact, tell us there's a 16% raise. And you know, our out-of-district placement budget is in excess of $6 million. So it's $1 million right there. That you had budgeted for, you know, less than half of. So there was a large hue and cry across the state. And for what it's worth, it wasn't worth much, but it is something that we're facing across the state with all the districts right now. I mean, you've seen other districts that have encountered this problem over the last couple of years too, which is one of the reasons we said at town meeting this spring, we were asking for a larger appropriation for 25 than we would normally have projected over 24, because 24 we knew was in a hole. And so we had to make that up in our 25 budget, you know, as well as project the increased cost for 25. So we knew it was a problem then. It just, the magnitude of the problem just kept growing on us. When we had, you know, $1.5 million in reserves for special education, we thought for sure that would cover this, and it just kept going through the end of the year.
This is all.
Two quick questions. Just make sure I'm on. First, so the out-of-district placement cost is $6 million. I feel like earlier you alluded to the idea that that cost might actually be reduced if we had more special ed space in district. Do you anticipate if we had a new school building with the special ed spaces that was required, that cost would be reduced?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would provide space not just in a new building, but across the district. So yeah, we would be able to absolutely bring that number down.
So that's important to know, because I think we often hear about costs, we don't often hear about benefits. The second question, related to this topic, just in terms of a budgeting timeline, I run a department at Yale and I get a monthly update on my budget, and so I kind of have some sense of how things are being spent or not spent, and we certainly have, you know, unexpected costs, but I'm just curious about how, you know, there was no early indication that this was going to be a potential problem, because like a month earlier, this is a whole different conversation. And I'm just curious, not so much to sort of look back and point fingers, but more looking forward. What kind of assurances can we have that we're really making sure that the budget's not going to have this kind of a spike in the future? You know, even with the state, you know, coming in, like that might have been a good time to go and say, okay, let's crunch the numbers and figure out what this is going to do to us in the long term, and that didn't happen.
So we had you know, roughly 1.5 in reserve, and as Glenn was kind of tallying, and you can speak to this yourself, but as Glenn was tallying these last expenses that were coming in that were not encumbered, you know, and some of these costs are 1 or 2 placements or 1 or 2 things that someone didn't put an invoice in for, or you know, kind of like end of year close up where some of these costs are kind of rising to the surface. That 1.5, which Glenn predicted would be enough, we kind of crested that 1.5, and that's where, you know, Glenn started, and I started talking with Nick and Amy to talk about, okay, like, our processes and procedures didn't catch that these costs were coming in. And do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, there are times too. For instance, if someone has a special education bus, the special ed department will put in a purchase order that'll encumber money for the entire year for that bus for that child. Generally speaking, you only pay for the days the child goes to school. Sometimes these children have extended illnesses and so forth. So at the end of the year, a lot of those encumbrances get wiped out with no expenses against them. And we always expect that. It didn't happen to the extent that it usually does this year. That and the other factor that plays into this are utility bills, which are also not an encumbered expense for the town because we just get the bills on the monthly basis. And our, I think, what are we going out for? Is it gas this year? Is it, we have another bid coming out for utility bills. And so we did, utility bills were slightly above. I mean, we spend over $1 million a year on electricity. So another 100,000 there is easy to happen in this climate. As we all know, utility bills are unpredictable, despite the best efforts of the town and the schools collectively to bid them.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I just want to, without a plan in place for replacing those ARPA funds, I'm wondering if we can kick this to our next meeting and have Nick come up with a plan to replace that ARPA funding.
I don't think he can this year. I just don't.
Yeah, so
we have that discussion already. I don't.
We have to close this out. If we're going to do this, this deficit needs to be erased ASAP so we can close our books on fiscal 24. In addition to that, we would need to work with the county to get this squared away and to receive the money. If we don't receive the money by 60 days after June 30, then all of this would have been for naught. In terms of a plan for INET, I can bring to this board a request to submit it to the Capitol and to move that forward as, through this process. If the board wants to take up putting it on the next town meeting warrant, we can do that at the next meeting. There's those options in terms of what the plan could be for the INET system. But again, that's in terms of thinking towards, working towards the next town meeting, firming up when that might be and what that article could be. And in this case, it could include the appropriation to replace this one here. The last factor I just wanted to mention, and I didn't, and I should have, is the timeline on ARPA is closing down, and the county is going to be, has informed us they're going to be monitoring anybody that has projects that go past the end of this calendar year. So in terms of where broadband might end up, it could end up where it's being built out fall, winter 24, really spring of 25. The county really doesn't want to be spending money past the end of this calendar year. So it might give us more breathing room to get that project done without putting at risk any of the federal money as well. So there's a timeline perspective in terms of building out the broadband correctly with a little bit more breathing room if it's funded solely with town dollars, or this portion is just non-ARPA related because those timelines are coming up quick. So there's another benefit to, not a benefit, but that gives us a little bit more flexibility in using the monies rather than retaining just it being funded by the federal funds.
Thank you. A couple of quick questions. Total number of kids in special ed right now? And how many outplacements? I think you told me.
16 or 17%, yeah.
Yeah, it's 770 approximately.
770 in
Something
special ed. And how many outplaced? I think you said 60.
68 are outplaced.
You talked about Medicaid numbers, Medicaid funding. What percentage of the kids are getting Medicaid reimbursement? And what does that number look like yearly?
We get about 150 to 200,000 yearly in Medicaid reimbursement. We use it to fund some of the special ed positions, but we put some of it aside every year into a Medicaid revolving fund to try to mitigate some of these costs. So we had built up close to $500,000 in the Medicaid fund, which we again use as our reserve fund, if you will.
Final couple of questions. What factor are you going to use going forward in terms of anticipating costs? Because this went up 16%. So what do you anticipate you're going to use as a factor going forward?
I would be stunned if the state would do something like that again. I will not be building the the fiscal 26 budget, so I will defer to my successor.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Glenn said, the following year was around 5%. So that was a kind of once in a lifetime increase.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, as I reflect on how we've managed our special ed costs over time, we've always had this cushion and have been able to respond to these increases. This year, given all this kind of monumental year, we were not able to do that. So I think it falls to me and to Katie Blake, who was our new assistant superintendent, to plan in a new environment and kind of look ahead and be able to predict some of these things as the wave is starting to crash, and not be able to rely on those reserve funds, which we've never, I mean, when's the last time we spent those reserve funds down completely?
2006?
So my follow-up to that is, if you're spending those all down, what happens in the meantime when things come up? You have no reserve. You did talk about some other funding, though, that you had to potentially cover this. Didn't you, about this $400,000 or part of it?
Well, I mean, with something like the community schools revolving fund, when people pay into community schools their tuition, that money legally can only be used to support the community schools program. You can't reallocate it to do something else. You can't, you know. So the question is, can you, we do, for instance, every year charge back community schools a certain allowance for heating the buildings while they're in there, a certain allowance for custodial service while they're in there. They pay their own staff directly out of that fund. But there are certain, you know, extra costs that we bill back to them. So the ability to charge money against the community schools account really falls to, you know, can you justify it in terms of this is actually a community schools account? People aren't paying to go to the after-school program to fund, you know, the athletic program at the high school. That money has to be used for that purpose. So it's there, but it's of limited accessibility to us, you know, legally, because you just can't reappropriate it to anything.
So there's
drawing
nothing
down,
else?
It's there,
drawing
but
down from there
it's not really available.
Is there anything else that might help mitigate it more? That's all I'm asking. You know, we're talking 400,000. Is there somewhere that you're able to locate 200,000 or something? I don't know. Just throwing it out. Just throwing it out there. You know.
I asked that question the day I was told. Like.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Cohen. Go
Can I
ahead.
say one thing?
I have a couple, but I'll go last. Go ahead. You go.
Overall. Thank you, Dr. Havlicek, for sharing that information with me about the special ed program. My wife teaches special ed, and it's unpredictable. Totally unpredictable. This late thing I understand is a different issue, but special ed in itself, somebody could come up tomorrow and say, my kid has special needs, and you have to deal with it, and you have to address it. But that, to me, brings up the operational and the operational override and how critical it is to the school, and we don't know, and we need to know, and that's just a comment I wanted to make, and I wanted to thank you for that information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my piece of this has absolutely nothing to do with special ed. I don't care if we went over because of a custodial needing extra hours. I don't care what the reason is. I have spent the last 3 years trying to make the school and town budget one piece. I have worked with the former chair. I have worked with our former finance committee chair for years to make us one budget and not make us the town and the school separate budgets. And now I feel like that's where we are. We, and I'm really talking about me, had no idea that this was coming. And the fact that there was no information given to the select board, given to the finance committee at all about this shortfall before the last, like the deadline had already gone by, you guys knew about this. And so for me, I'm sitting here and I am really trying very hard to say it's okay to take from something that the town agreed to, that the select board has agreed to, that everybody has agreed to as being a needed thing to give to the schools with no plan in place for us to replace that needed thing that the town meeting members have agreed to, the select board has agreed to. I haven't even heard from the broadband committee. What do they think about this? I don't know what they're going to do. And so for me, I am imploring the school committee and you, Dr. Burrows, to work with us as the select board and let us know when something like this is happening prior to the beyond last day of us doing anything. Because this really ties our hands, and now we are taking from another thing that we have wanted to do to pay for this. And I will vote for it because we have to pay our bills. I mean, everybody has to pay their bills, even though it stinks. But this is not the way that I want us to move forward as a town, as two big players in this. This is not what I have been working for 5 years. I've been working for us to be together, and there's been no words until, I'm not going to say it again, but I am, 9:27 p.m. on the 15th of July. So, Mr. Chair, I'll vote in favor of it, but I got to say, I'm really hopeful that we can find a way to fund what we guaranteed town meeting members, what we ourselves have voted on previously. This is really a hard vote.
We take a lot of hard votes, so thank you. I'm just going to comment just briefly, and I've been in a lot of roles in my time here, and the first, as you know, my friend, this is unanticipated. Whether I do not expect it, Mr. Milano told me, but believe me, I get sped, and I understand it, and I understand how difficult it is, and I know the pressure, I don't want to use the word burden, the pressure that places upon your budget each and every year. The second thing is, it's not unprecedented. You may be here this year, but I've, as a department head, had to come with an unprecedented when you have a significant crime wave, and I can think back to a specific year, I think it was 2009. I remember very vividly, and you will as well, in 2015, 2016, when we received over 116 inches of snow in a matter of 4 weeks, what that did to our DPW snow and ice budgets, as well as all of our public safety departments. Those are significant. Anything could happen tomorrow. And I'll disagree with the one word Ms. Bradley, I know she's using the word guarantees, because when you get a budget, you like to think it's guaranteed, but pressures change things. And in my eyes, this is just one of those cases where we have to do it. Not to take away from the broadband, but you have to meet your priorities, and that's why, as Chair Carroll knows, and you've heard me in all of our meetings, as Mr. Cohen, I worry frantically about operational needs, because if we were a year out in this, there is no ARPA. We didn't have that. ARPA's gone. And then what do you have to do? So I'm going to make a motion to approve the American Rescue Plan Act allocations as presented by Mr. Milano tonight.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, we're all here. Aye. Yeah, we're all here. Thank you.
I never get to vote first.
Before you leave, as Dr. Pavlicek alluded tonight, and for his colleagues who were here, as well as his past colleagues, he has given immense commitment and dedication of his life to this town. And we owe him a debt of gratitude. I say we stand and give him an ovation. He didn't expect that from me. I'll tell you a funny story, just before he goes. When I met him when he was first campaigning many years ago for school committee, it was in a famous music venue that no longer exists. Most people would never believe, if they didn't know him, that he was in. Kevin in the back can agree. He was in the beach coma. He was in the beach coma campaigning at a music venue many years ago. So, thank you both. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming tonight. Can we go home now? Okay. Moving on. Discussion update, item 6. We don't have, are we gonna, I don't see, do you wanna defer this to the next meeting? The Fire Station Building Committee's meeting tonight, so the fact that he's not here, I think I'm just gonna defer that. What's the matter? We all right?
Yeah, we're fine.
Item 7.
We're just getting ready.
Select Board Policy Committee, Board Committee reports to the Select Board. Oh my God, I'm a mess. Thanks, Beth.
I think this is me, actually.
It
I
is,
do too.
'cause-
If you want to defer, you can.
It's a very quick
No,
one.
he's not taking it.
And actually,
Is Mr. Zoll's the chair?
I am the chair of the policy committee, so, say a prayer for me and for the town. Just a quick one on this. So we had a short meeting to kind of talk about some initial topics. And actually, in Citizen Speak, Mr. Lizio brought up this very same topic, that we're going to consider some kind of a policy that would require committees to report back minutes so that they can, so that there's basically, as he said earlier, to increase the transparency in the town, better understand the roles and workings of the committees. There's a couple of other things that we're looking at in terms of committees, where we're looking towards for some other towns, for examples, on appointments and that. But we'll be addressing that sort of more later when we have sort of examples. And thank you, Mr. Milano, for sending me an initial look past at those. But we just wanted, I think, to report back that that's something that we're considering. So it was a well-timed citizens' comment, because I think that's something that everyone's concerned about, making sure that we have minutes in from the committees. So I think that was all that we wanted to report back on. Was there anything else? I don't think so. It was like a 15-minute meeting.
It was a very short meeting. Some of the other, you can see by our agenda, some of the other topics that we took up was naming.
Yes.
So we are going to ask for some feedback from the select board on this. Because we are now going to, I don't know what the right word, I was going to say declassify, but that's not right, decommission the Carol Blute room at Town Hall. There will then be no buildings or rooms named after a woman or person of color in our entire town.
Are we really doing that?
Well, it's going to move over.
I never heard that. I've never heard that.
We will have a new meeting room that most likely will mean folks will need to use Blute much less frequently.
Much less. So we will not be using it as we are currently. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, but we won't be decommissioning her name.
Well, her name's still going to be on it, but nobody will be using it, so there will be no reference of a woman of anything in this town. Every building, every field, everything is named after a man. And so what we've been discussing is looking at other towns and how they go about naming things, and whether there's a naming committee or what that looks like. We have no idea. But it's something that I think in 2024 we should really take a hard look at, and making sure that we are representative of the entire town, which has women and people of color in it too.
Yeah, I think that was the gist of it, and just to ensure there was transparency in the naming process, and
Yes.
maybe pulling in like the historical commission, they can make suggestions. Like they've got the David Chestnut Jazz Festival that happens at the Eustis Estate, which is named after a gentleman of color who used to work at the Eustis Estate and was a sort of pioneer for jazz in Milton.
Right.
So there's probably some other examples out there that we may not necessarily know about, but certain other people may know about. So just making sure that as we think about new buildings in the future, new rooms in the future, whatever happens to the old fire station, that we're being thoughtful about the folks that we're honoring.
So just for everyone who is at home watching, who remembers Mrs. Blute as I do, when you walked in the room, you bowed to Mrs. Blute. You didn't get anything done without Mrs. Blute. She was,
She's quite a fixture.
Quite
I
a
remember
fixture,
her.
quite a fixture in that building.
But imagine never going in that room again
Oh, I
and
know,
needing to
I know.
use it. Do you see
But
what I'm saying?
I think you're going to be surprised. You'll be shocked
It'll be
how
missed.
much meetings are going to increase. He disagree? He doesn't?
No,
I
it's
think,
good. It's
I think requests are
a
going to
new
come.
room with
I do
new
too.
requests. That's fair.
Anyway.
Okay.
May I say something?
Sure.
So a couple of quick things with regards to that. So I would say with the committees, I agree that we need to have minutes. I think, and that you know that, Ms. Bradley knows I'm big on that we need to have the minutes. And I actually would hope that we would look at the fact if you have a committee and you're outstanding of, say, 3 months worth or whatever of minutes, that you shouldn't be able to meet. Because if we get a request from a resident, then, it's using our town resources to try to figure it out and get the information for people. And so I think, I think 2 or 3 months is okay. I wouldn't want to go past that. For somebody that meets once a month, I'm looking at both of you.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm not writing the name down he is because I'm not the chair.
So I would say that's one thing. I think the other thing with regards to appointments and committees and so forth, Ms. Bradley and I did a really big project, I would say, right, where we did a new form, and there's a handbook, and so I think we should be looking at the handbook a little bit more. So that's what I would say. So there is something already in process to take a look at, because we worked on that.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the other thing related to minutes too is reporting back from committees to select board. Whether or not we want to have everybody report all the time, probably not, but we may want to have at least one report per year, and maybe it's submitted written or something like that. But we'll be bringing policies for consideration, but definitely welcome any input.
Okay, thank you.
Good?
That's it for that,
That's
Mr. Chair.
it. We
Thank
got
you.
nothing.
Moving right along. I'm past 9:15. I'm so mad at myself.
No, you're not. It's 9:12.
No, it's okay. So item, I have it right here. I see them
9?
here. 9.
8.
Oh, appointments, that's right, number 8 first.
But I want to take care of the, so I want to jump to item 9. That's what I wanted to do. I want to jump to item 9, invite our directors. Kevin, you can come too. Sorry for the delay. So this is an application from the Milton Arts Center and the Chamber of Commerce to use Manning Park. Am I correct? Is that what you're here for? Yeah. To use Manning Park on September 6th at 4 p.m. for the first Friday back to business.
Thank you.
Don't worry, just throw it at me.
You're right. Thanks, Joe.
Good evening. How are you? Good evening. If you just state your name, and the floor is yours. Thank you for waiting.
Good evening. I'm Brittany Pomeroy. I'm on the Board of Directors at the Art Center, and I'm also on the Event Planning Committee for the Chamber of Commerce. And the Milton Art Center and the Chamber are getting together this year for the Milton Art Center's traditional First Friday in September and bringing it outside onto the deck. And there's going to be food, music, artisans, games, family-friendly event, and we're asking for permission to use the deck. September 6th, 4 to 6.
Questions, comments before we
4 to
go
8.
ahead.
4 to
4 to
dusk.
6 or 4 to 8, what do you want? Pick a number.
Well, I think the permit says dusk, and if,
So why don't we
the
say-
latest it would be 8 p.m.
Okay. No, why don't we just say, 4 to dusk, and then you'll be all right. How's that? Okay. Any questions, comments, motions?
Anything else you'd like to say about the event, to let people know about it?
There'll be music. So, the Chamber of Commerce usually does Halloween stroll, and, it'll be slightly similar to that, but there'll be, the first Fridays, we always focus on music, local musicians, and we'd like to have local artisans represented here. And along with all the small businesses representing.
Chamber businesses.
Yes, a joint event with the chamber. A lot of the businesses will have tables together to promote their businesses. You know, welcoming people back from the summer.
Right.
We'll have a handful of local talented musicians, including possibly Mr. Zoll.
You said talented, so I don't know.
But there'll be a handful of local folks that will be participating, and it's going to be fun. It's another opportunity to use the Manning deck, Manning Park, for the community, and to show what a great space it is, and to put it to some more use.
Mm-hmm. And we're hoping to make it an annual event.
Well, you know where I am on that. You know what I did last year, and I wanted to do this summer, but haven't been able to do it yet. But so the only thing I will ask is, you will need some help from us in those. I'll give you pointers on what the hurdles we had, and you can check with Nick, and we can make sure that happens, because power is definitely an issue on the.
Right.
You need to bump up on the power. Do you want to bring in a stage, or you're going to want to bring in a stage or anything? What do you anticipate? You don't have to answer that, but those are things you want to think about.
Yeah, we are. We had a discussion with Nick a couple months ago about some possibilities, but we'll pull something together.
Okay.
I'll make a motion if we're all set.
Go for it. Oh, wait, you have a question?
I just wanted to say I think it's a great idea for the square.
Thank you.
It is. Okay, then I'll make the motion. I'll make a motion to approve the application from the Milton Arts Center and Chamber of Commerce to use Manning Park on Friday, September 6, 2024 at 4 p.m. for the first Friday back to business.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Great.
Thank
you.
you.
For your patience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your patience. Take care. Pray for sun. It's the most important thing.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about a rain date.
Just don't think about it, it won't happen.
I know.
Okay, item 10, discussion approval. No.
Number 8.
Oh, 8, discussion approval application from Milton Arts Center. No, I thought we just finished that. Town committee appointments. All right, so we are going to defer Concon. I'm deferring that one, and so then we have.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
The trustees of the Affordable Housing Trust, we're hoping to defer as well, because they're in the process of recruiting some diverse members. Currently, it's a all-white board, and they have a couple of conversations going. So they would like to have, and maybe if we meet again next week, we could, if they have applications in, great. If they don't, then they don't. But they would like to have a more representative body for the trustees of the Affordable Housing Trust, both geographically and racially.
We have 2 more openings, though?
There's 2 slots that are open. Yes.
After this?
Not after
no.
this. I think
These are the 2.
My understanding, and I double checked this, is it's a minimum. It has to be a minimum of 5. And right now there are 7 members. I may have been the one who stated it was a max of 9. I don't know where I got that.
I
Maybe
saw
you
that
stated
somewhere, though.
Okay.
I did see that somewhere.
In which case, as Mr. Zoll points out, if these 2 appointments who are listed are appointed, that would fill it out. And it sounds like we may get applications in imminently.
So if we could get a week to consider that, they would appreciate it. This is on behalf of the trust. They discussed it last night.
I don't want to do it in these 2 kids are 2 of the young, they both came here and sat tonight. They both heard us say it. They just left. I'd be more inclined to appoint them. I really would. I get that. I get what you're asking, but I'm more inclined.
I just worry that the Affordable Housing Trust then is just overwhelmingly white men from, and not diverse. It's a concern. I mean, we want to be representative of geographically across.
I get that.
And racially.
I get that. But we fight so hard to get people to come out. We said it last meeting, and I thought I said 4 because I thought you said we had 4, but
we had 4 when there were 2 when we were appointing 2 last time.
So, Mr. Chair, if I can, this was a big thing that I spoke about a lot when Ms. Musto and I were going over the boards and committees and the application process and making it more transparent. One of the things that happens is that people of color feel like it's not worth their time to even try. And the fact that the Affordable Housing Committee is actively having conversations right now with some people, I would just like to say that giving it another week to see if we do get some people of color that would like to apply, I think that is a big step forward for our committees. And also our DEI committee, which basically said to us, we have a disproportionate amount of of white folks on our committees as it represents to our town demographics.
There's a maximum.
Go ahead.
Would it be too much to ask to have some of the existing people step down to allow for this to happen? And
I don't do that.
There's no
I
maximum.
don't do that.
Mr. Chair,
There is no max.
There's no
All right,
max.
So I'm fine with that. So let's appoint these two kids and then let's,
if we get
if
some
you get two
extra
more next, I'm fine with that. And that's why I was like.
That's fine, too, for
I
me.
said publicly when we made the last appointments, I asked you, and I know the number was 4. So I'd be inclined to appoint these two tonight and then
That's
two
fine for me
additionals.
also, if
Okay.
we have the ability to appoint some more diverse
As long as
candidates.
we
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, 'cause there's
Listen,
no-
I'm fine with that I'm not,
I just
we
don't
say
want
it
to
all the
discount.
time, it's
I don't
hard
wanna
enough to get
discount
people to
of
put their name
color.
forward.
I 100% support that. Whenever somebody puts their hands up, you know me,
Yeah.
I'm always begging people to apply for things. So I'm okay with that.
Sure, oh, sorry, I
Thank
wasn't.
you, thank you.
Just kick me.
I think the other thing is, just in general, I think that, you know, when we looked at the whole process of the committees and stuff and so forth, we also looked at the fact that we have, you know, certain people that are on committees for multiple years. And so, you know, always, I mean, I'm willing to have more people on a committee, but I feel like sometimes it's too big of a committee too. So maybe what the process should be, and we should really look at this too, is we have, you know, people on this committee and other committees that have been there for a very long time, and it's good to have a few that have the longevity, but when you have people that are applying, you know, it is good to get different voices in. And so, you know, whether they're old, young, whatever color they are, or, you know, whatever, I just feel like we need to look at that too. So I think sometimes we're not really doing that enough either, which was the point of when Ms. Bradley and I were doing this, was to have some variety, you know, new voices on committees and so forth. So I just would say that always expanding committees isn't always a solution. Sometimes it's looking at what you have, and if you have applications for that committee, beyond these two people that have applied, maybe you have to look at who's on the committee and replace 2 people with 2 new voices.
Specifically if they hold more
Yeah, I
than
don't
one
wanna do that.
role
No, I
on
don't-
board
I
or
don't wanna do that,
committee.
no.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of it though, is that we
If-
talked about boards and committees and about how multiple people hold multiple roles on both boards and committees. And so people, you know, if we could, if this is a thing, then people should think about how many committees or boards should they be on, because really, you
That-
should serve on
yeah.
one thing.
I agree with you.
I agree
Right.
with that. I think that, you know, for me, it's we've already just appointed the whole slate, and they just got sworn in at town hall for you know, for this last go through. So, at any rate, I don't think that we need to continue the discussion right now, but I think it's because we're still trying to recruit folks. So, so I think I'm fine with that. Mr. Milano, maybe for the whole slate, can you let us know which ones have? Are there any that here that are capped that we would have to pick from, or
one of them I think we do.
Of the whole slate, it's climate action.
Climate
Just the
action,
climate action.
climate action, we do.
This board has to make some decisions.
So can I get a motion on the trustees of the Affordable Housing Trust? Can I get a motion on these 2 candidates?
I'll make a motion to appoint Kevin Chisholm Jr. and Sean Bentley to the Affordable Housing
Do I have a
Trust.
second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Musto. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's go to the next, the easiest one. Youth Task Force.
Can I say
Oh,
something
I'm sorry,
first?
yeah, go ahead.
About the Youth Task Force? So I'm going to pull a mom moment. Robert Beato would like to withdraw his name, and he forgot. Everybody's going to laugh now. He forgot. He's been training, and he forgot
I
to
got it, okay.
email. So because of track and because of nationals, he just can't. He's
And
been
you are
missing
his mom.
meetings, and I am his mom, and I'm really sorry.
I don't even know if this is legal. How old is he?
He's 15.
All right, okay, all right. And let's say, if he's 18 years old and he's here at this next meeting.
No, because of track and because of nationals, he's missed a lot of meetings.
All right,
He feels
that's it. You
really
don't need any
bad.
more. You don't need
He
any more.
wants to open it up.
Is he doing homework to replace
Okay.
himself?
He's doing so much homework, so yes.
I'll nominate Griffin Angus,
So you got-
Giselle
all right, go ahead.
Demanche, Christina Lillahook, Rachel Pozar, Zadie Rose, and John Varghese.
For
to
reappointment.
Reappointment for the.
Do I have a
I'll
second?
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Now, Council on Aging Board of Directors, I guess that's an all. So candidates for reappointment, I need a motion on 1, 2, 3, 4 people. If someone wants to make that motion.
I'll make a motion to reappoint the following individuals as members of the Council of Aging Board of Directors for a 3-year term: Jean Leslie, Marshall Levy, Denise Rockland and Lorraine Sumner.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Zoll. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now, do I have a motion for candidates for associate members?
Sure. I'll move to appoint the following individuals as associate members to the Council of Aging Board of Directors for a one-year term: David Cornish and Yvonne Reedy.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Zoll. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Climate Action Committee, one candidate. Do I have a motion for the candidate for reappointment?
I'll
First.
move to reappoint Lisa Troy for another term of, was it 1 year? 2 years?
1 year.
1 year.
I'll
Do I have a
second.
second by Ms. Musto? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so now, candidates for appointment, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8, for how many? To my right? Am I?
3.
For 3.
slots.
And Mr. Milano can appoint one.
Correct.
So you're gonna do that tonight too? You're gonna pick one?
Sure.
Okay.
So Mr. Milano and I both got an email from Mr. Hasha, the chair, I think, of CAPC, that recommended 2 of the 3 candidates, Dr. Stephen Popkin and Matt Panucci, although that recommendation stated that everyone else looks like a great candidate too, and seems qualified. So they deferred to the select board, but those were their 2 recommendations. Did I get that right?
Yep.
So I only know 2, so there's 2 that so one of them is Matt Panucci, so, and the other is Eric Miller. So,
I would like to nominate
go ahead, you do
also.
your.
Well, I would like
Sounds
to
good.
nominate also S. Kyle Johnson to be part of the committee, along with Popkin and Panucci.
All right, so S. Kyle Johnson.
He's not on here, though.
S. Kyle, candidates
he
for
is.
appointment.
He is, I missed him, and probably what you're looking at, Roxanne, but he's listed on the agenda. That is correct.
Oh,
I got him,
I'm
he's on
looking at
there.
the
I got him.
Yep,
motions.
I
Matt,
transposed it wrongly.
Oh.
Matt Panucci,
Yep,
And Stephen Popkin.
and Stephen Popkin.
yep. So those 3, and then Nick can
Eric
do
Miller?
his.
All right, hold on, those are yours. Do I have any, and so I will make a motion to appoint Eric Miller. Do I have a second? Oh, no, do we second those other?
Should we do Panucci
Nick's
and
first?
Popkin first?
Yeah, want to do that? Okay. So go ahead. Why
So
don't
I'll
you make that as a
motion
motion?
to appoint Matt Panucci and Stephen Popkin to the Climate Action Planning Committee for a term of 1 year.
Do I have
I'll
a second?
second.
Second by Ms. Musto. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to make a motion that we appoint S. Kyle Johnson to the Climate Action Committee, Planning Committee, sorry.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by, okay. All those in favor?
Because we have one more, Roxanne.
Oh, we have one more.
Well,
You have one more. You have one more?
Well, I was going to say that R. Eric Miller.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, so that's,
Yeah,
so,
that's all 4, right?
Nick?
do you have someone different you want to pick? Who do you want? I don't,
Yeah, who
I
does
don't.
Nick want to pick?
I don't know.
Nick wants to pick R. Eric Miller.
I'm
I
happy
can't
to
recognize you,
facilitate,
sorry,
I don't
so the
know.
board
That
has,
would make it
it's
great.
appointments.
All right.
That works.
That works?
Sure.
All right, so do yours first.
Okay.
I think you made the motion and I
I
seconded
did.
it. right?
It's already on the table.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Milano.
I'll appoint Mr. R. Eric Miller to the Climate Action Planning Committee.
There's Anita.
I recommend that the
Yeah.
select board affirms my appointment.
I will make a motion to affirm his appointment.
Second.
Second, okay.
Second by Ms.
seconded,
Musto. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, we're done with that. All right, moving on.
Can I just ask
Oh,
a question?
sorry,
Sure.
Mr. Hasha's here. Did you want to say something?
We did it.
We did the reappointment.
Hold up. Can I, just for the board's thoughts
couldn't-
and, oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think we have, and I think Dr. Hasha will attest that this is a group of folks who are very interested. So if the board was ever interested in opening the idea of an associate member or some other kind of position to keep some folks who are involved, not in formal roles as committee members, but maybe to create a pathway for them to take over when openings open up. So maybe something to think about for the future.
It's a great
as we have.
So
This is
similar
one
to
of the
the
few times where we have
COA, so
too
I
many
gotta-
people to fill.
I like that.
Do you want to come forward with that at a later date? We'll gladly put
Yep.
that on the
And we
agenda.
can-
All right with that?
Uh-huh, sure.
Okay.
And maybe let the applicants who weren't appointed know that that's something that's in process.
Okay.
Did we get through everybody? now?
Yes. Okay.
Did
hold
we
on.
get conservation? Oh, no, we're skipping.
No, I deferred it. Okay, so item 11. Am I correct? Item 11?
You
Lynn,
are.
yeah?
You are. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for the Milton Public Library to use the Town Green and Baron Hugo gazebo on Thursday, August 15th, 2024, from 3 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. for an end-of-summer reading event with Bryson Lang juggling and magic show.
I'll second.
Is he juggling books?
I am not sure.
If it's a reading event and a magic show?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item
Can we
11?
just go to 11?
11, yeah.
Okay, great. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to accept the payment in lieu of taxes from Milton Academy for fiscal year 2024 in the amount of $200,025. I never do this right. $225,000.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Zoll. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Okay, item 12, discussion, oh, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a
Oh,
motion.
go ahead, go.
We're
All
just
right.
flying.
You're being me.
I am. I'm in your seat.
Yeah, you are. I
Mr.
might
Chair,
swap it back.
I'd like to we actually did switch seats. So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to accept the donation from the East Congregational Church in the amount of $600 to the Milton Coalition.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for a one-day liquor license to the Forbes House Museum located at 215 Adams Street, Barn Fest 2024 for Thursday, August 15th, 2024 from 6 to 9 p.m.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now
Ooh,
somebody else.
Mr. Milano.
We have the.
What else? What did I miss?
Meeting
Oh,
minutes?
hold on,
Meeting minutes.
wait a minute. How come that's not on my agenda? Oh, I had to flip pages.
There's no changes to them, right?
No,
They
but I have to
were
I'm recused on, when was I out of state? I was away from one of them.
The
So
one that
if someone
was
wants to
the
make a
joint one.
motion, go ahead. Yeah, the joint one that I was away.
What one was that?
Someone want to make a motion?
Lynn, which one was that?
The one that
June
we did
20th.
together with
Joint with
the.
the planning board.
No, but what? Not
Oh,
what?
what?
Oh, I
day.
was away for that too.
What?
Yeah, it says Chair Wells, Ms. Crowdy Rodway, so this
June
would be,
20th, she said.
I need a motion to
I'll
approve.
make a motion
Go
to
ahead.
approve the joint meeting of the Select Board and Planning Board meeting minutes for June 20th, 2024.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oh, no,
You
abstain.
know, we
abstained.
Abstain.
I'm
So
abstaining.
2 abstentions.
You abstained. Did we do this one-day
get
liquor
that,
license
Lynn?
for the Forbes
Yeah,
House?
I did.
We did.
All right,
Yeah.
we did that, okay.
So then we have the other meeting minutes, right?
Yep.
The 11th.
So I'm going to make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes from June 11, 2024, and June 25th, 2024, and July 15th, 2024.
I'll
We have a
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is it
You can taste the finish line.
Mr. Milano?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm out of the office this week, so I don't have a ton of updates, but if you haven't been to Town Hall and seen the landscaping going in around the fire headquarters, the paving is done, striping is scheduled for Friday, landscaping is going in now, so the whole center area looks much less like a construction site and much more like a welcoming part of Milton. So we're happy to have that. There is a new pathway from the Council on Aging area over to Town Hall with some nice lighting that goes through, I wouldn't say the woods, I guess through the park area adjacent to Town Hall. It looks great. So the project's wrapping up and should be done shortly, and the new meeting room in the first floor of the old fire headquarters should be opening before fall is what we expect. So nice to see this project coming to completion, and I'll close there, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Milano, just a quick question on the striping. I know there was some concern on the spaces and so that they wouldn't be as narrow. Did they look at that? Because I know that was some concern with that from different people.
Yes, they can. We
Did they
can
look at it at all,
restripe with the same number of spaces, or we can restripe 6 inches wider and lose 3 spaces. So right now we're keeping it the same to hold on to the spaces. And that's
Brad,
the
you're
plan for
super
Friday.
satisfied.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
so
gotta-
it's
you
just,
definitely gonna
with
need it.
parking is tight, we understand that. The one thing, I think, the 2 factors I think that also went into it was a lot of the contractors were parking there. They're parking heavier equipment, bigger trucks. A lot of the town vehicles go in there. They're typically smaller. So I think it'll be a little bit of a different story once the project is done. But that said, yes, it's going to be, right now, planned to be the same size unless there's direction otherwise. But I think just based on the tightness of this overall parking, to give up to 3 spaces for a few inches in each space didn't seem like the right trade-off.
There's still
right now.
handicap spaces available.
Yep, and there'll be several additional added through this.
Go ahead.
Mr. Milano, I had asked,
I felt it, I didn't even have to hear it.
I know, I whispered, you could hear it. Mr. Milano asked probably a year ago if we could get the striping redone in front of the library so people can exit and enter the library, because it backs it up when people just block that. Yeah, when they block that spot. I know that Chase said that he would put it on the list. I'm sure it just fell off. If we could ask to get that put back on so that people can come and go from the library and not be blocked by the millions of cars in our town.
Yes, I can get that over to them. The
Call
striping,
She just
folks
stayed in
haven't
millions
been
of cars.
in.
Yeah, it's across.
They haven't been in town yet this summer.
Then we
I
gotta
can,
get people
get
going
them.
bad. I see
People do.
Yeah.
Some do, yeah.
Not all.
I stop.
I do too,
Sometimes
I
people
stop.
honk behind me, and I'm like, they're like,
Where you gonna go?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything else?
That's it for me.
Nick, do you have anything? All right, public comment response?
I do have one item. If you don't have any
Oh, no, go
chair
ahead.
report.
I don't, I know, only thing I'm gonna say in the chair report is I will, I mean, I did not expect to have a number tonight. There was no way I was gonna put it on without a number, and I do thank Sean for getting us the number before tonight, even though I'm not happy with the number. But, so I will schedule a meeting for a vote, just, and maybe even we do it on Zoom, like, I don't know. It's only gonna be one agenda, right?
It'll probably have to be on Zoom for me.
Yeah, so that's fine. I'll do that, whatever. I can't lose sight of the operational thing. I've got a lot of things in my, and I will want to meet again with Chair Carroll, and I thank her for her comments tonight, and I thank her for her time, and just the only thing we've talked about, to what you brought up, we never talked about any of that. We've only talked about operational and what this, not getting to where we got tonight, getting to that.
Thank you. We did meet, we used to meet with the chair of both the select board and the finance
We
committee.
may do that when we get to that, but now we have numbers. I didn't,
Right.
it was like,
So thank you for saying that, Mr. Chair. I didn't know what was going on.
My public comment response is actually not about the school, shockingly. Mr. Lizio mentioned, I thought it was a really good idea, the idea of time stamping, and I'm just wondering if we could ask Milton Access TV, like, what does that look like from a cost perspective? And I would imagine that we might want to just think about it for maybe like select board and planning board, but you know what it means by time stamping?
Oh,
So
I
it
think
means like kind of creates chapters in the YouTube so you could see
okay,
where
right.
agenda item 4 starts. So if you're interested to watch but you don't want to like fast forward or whatever, you can
You
just
just
kind
go
of
to a
click
certain
to.
Yeah, I think it's a great
if it's
idea.
relatively easy to do, I think it's a really great suggestion.
Shane will love that.
Consider is including the agenda with the time in the description, so even
That's a good point too. If they
breaking it
can.
in chapters to.
Oh, that's a good idea,
That's a really
too.
good idea. Do you want to?
Yeah, we can follow up on it.
Thank
Any
you
of that
very
done
much.
by tomorrow?
But I thought that was a great suggestion from Mr. Lizio. I appreciate it.
Are we doing these? Next two things?
Future meeting dates, August 13th, and then one to be determined before the 7th. I'm not going to wait till the 7th. We'll do it
No,
before the
that's
7th.
not what I was
What are the
talking
other two things? Oh, executive?
The exec.
So do we need to go on executive tonight?
Yes, please. They should be, the first one should be quick.
Tried. I was thinking the way you
tried.
were. So given that, item 20, discussion strategy with respect to litigation, the Attorney General versus the Town of Milton et al., Supreme Judicial Court of Suffolk County. They have two motions, right? So we're going to go in on two. Am I reading both of them?
Correct.
Some of this will be two motions. So I moved to enter an executive session for discussion regarding strategy with respect to litigation filed by the Attorney General versus the Town of Milton et al. I'll skip the Superior Judicial Court, Suffolk County, based on my belief that discussion of this matter in open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Select Board. The Select Board will not return to open session. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Mr. Zoll, I'm just going right to left.
Oh,
Mr. Zoll.
yes.
Mr. Zoll. Mr. Zoll. Yes? Oh, you said
Yes, yes.
Ms. Musto?
Excitedly.
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay. Next one. I moved to enter an executive session for discussion regarding strategy with respect to litigation of the Town of Milton versus Clark et al., Superior Court, Norfolk County, based on my belief that the discussion on this matter in open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Select Board. The Select Board will not return to open session. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Second by Mr. Musto. Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
And myself, yes. We are adjourned for public session. Thank you all, and thank you to everyone who came tonight. Thank you to everyone on TV. I know that on the phone, I know we didn't get you all, but this is a big decision for our community. So the fact that apathy is not alive in this town shows a credit to just what a great community Milton is. So thank you all.